What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Trevor, Sikkema, Dalton, Wasserman here with you guys for the grades release show for Week 11 in the NFL. If you're new around here, what we do is we go through the top fives for every single team in every single game. We'll give you the top five players, the graded players, I should say, for every single matchup that we have here. We'll also give you a most impressive and a most disappointing, plus the stat that told the whole story. So it doesn't just have to be something that you see in a common stat sheet. It could be something that's very PFF-centric, obviously, here on a PFF show. If you guys don't have a PFF Plus subscription and you want to follow along, go to pff.com, get yourself that, and you can read off the stats just like we're reading them here on this show. Dalton, how you doing today, my friend?
Pretty darn good. I think this was the best slate we had in a while. And I got to add one more thing to that. We also have a new updated PFF Discord server where we have chats with people like me. I go on Fridays at 3 o'clock and talk about draft prospects. We get Ben Lindsay talking about betting. We get, I think, Max Chadwick talking about college. Mitch Kaiser talking about college. We get all sorts of people. 6 days, I think 6 or maybe even 7 days a week in there where we get different chats. We get grader chats during the week if you want to ask about grades, especially NFL grades. So a lot of fun in that PFF Discord server. Join the community. Chat with us all week.
Yeah, we just launched the PFF Discord this year, and it's really been growing. We got a great group of people who are in there constantly talking about all sorts of football. You mentioned it's a lot of different topics. It could be college, it could be draft, it could be betting. Ben Lindsay, shout out, hit a $1,300 bet this weekend, so we were actually watching that one in the office when it hit. And Ben, normally a very reserved guy, doesn't show a lot of emotion. I think he did like 3 laps around the office.
He had a couple wind sprints.
That is the most emotion I have seen in Ben Lindsay, I think, in my entire life.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, smart man betting on the Lions. Because especially yesterday.
It was the alt spreads, right, for the Lions?
Yeah, he had Jamison Williams. He had something Jared Goff. He had a whole Lions package that, of course, yesterday worked, and they went and set all the records they did, and we'll get there for
Bet
sure.
Bet the matchups, baby.
Yeah,
Bet the matchups. I know. I'm excited to get into these because you're right. It felt like over the last couple of weeks, not that it was boring. It's never a boring week in the NFL, but it felt like we were missing those marquee matchups and really those performances that we felt like could have some long-standing impact, things that were beyond just the week that we saw. In Week 11, it felt like we got a lot of, okay, this result, it's not just a win or a loss. It's not just a good performance or a bad performance. This is something that could tell the tale of the rest of the season as we get down into the regular season and then obviously into the playoffs. I think the game that we should start with is Chiefs-Bills. Now, we're going to go a little bit out of order here as we go through these games, and we're going to give you a lot of the headliners first because there were so many impactful games to get to. Buffalo Bills take down the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs lose for the first time this season. Buffalo defends home field, and this one had to feel good for Buffalo. I mean, Amari Cooper, who is new with the Buffalo Bills, I don't know if you caught this. After the game, he kind of smiled, and he was like, that's the first time I've felt joy after a win in a long time, because these players, yeah, they're competitive. Yeah, they want to win, but sometimes it's sort of just about, doing your job the way that you need to, and you get a little bit reserved, and obviously, things are going really well in Buffalo, and he's happy in Buffalo to be able to say something like that and feel those emotions. Let's look at the top 5 graded players from the Buffalo Bills in this game in their win. At the top spot, we have wide receiver Khalil Shakir with an 81.1 overall grade. On the other side of things, on the defensive side of the ball, edge rusher Greg Rousseau comes in at number 2 with a 79.9. Offensive tackle Deion Dawkins with a 77.4. And then back-to-back wide receivers here. Curtis Samuel had a really good game with a 77.0. And then wide receiver Amari Cooper there, he is rounding things out at number 5 with a 75.6. Josh Allen in this game, 90.2 overall grade. On Kansas City's side of things, Creed Humphrey, as he often is in these top 5s, he's at the top of the list with an 85.9 overall grade in this game. Cornerback Trent McDuffie with an 80.9, wide receiver Mecole Hardman with a 73.8, wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins a 73.6, and then edge rusher Michael Dana with a 73.1. Patrick Mahomes in this game a 74.0. Dalton, as I often do, I'll ask you to kick it off with the stat that told the story. What was it?
So you know what I like about these big games is what usually happens is everything you've studied about the two teams all comes to the forefront at some point throughout the game, right? And there's so many different things to pick from. Even the guys in that graphic, right? Khalil Shakir getting it done against man coverage, and Greg Rousseau dominating lately, and Josh Allen just being Josh Allen. But I think the biggest thing that I want to go back to is something I talked about on the show last week when they beat the Colts. The Bills play such clean football. You take out the 2 kneel downs at the end, only 3 negative plays. 3 plays all night that lost yardage on offense. And the Chiefs only had 3 negative plays as well. So I told you last week the Bills are a lot more like the Chiefs than we think, right? Yep. They don't have Stephon Diggs anymore. They don't get as vertical anymore. And that's okay. You can still win without doing that. And even then, they pick their shots, right? So, I think this offense, how you get like like boxers early in their career. Think about Mike Tyson from the 80s, certainly not from this weekend. How it was kind of swinging wildly, and they want to get the knockouts and rack up knockouts early in their career.
Right.
And that was Josh Allen, right? It was like kind of the Brett Favre thing where it's all or nothing. And now what this Bills offense does is they kind of win with jabs, right? And then they decide to throw their haymaker when it's actually there. And he still had 5 big-time throws in this game, even though there was only 1 touchdown pass, and then he obviously had the big run at the end. But they now pick their spots to make big plays, right? If they get one-on-one on the outside, I think, was it Amari Cooper with the early catch that against man-to-man coverage, that's when they'll take their shots, but they're not forcing it at all. They don't make negative plays. They won the turnover battle 2-1 in this game. That one interception near the end of the second quarter, that was really their only big mistake on offense the whole night. They didn't allow any sacks. And then even on defense, they only allowed 4 total explosive plays to the Chiefs and just 1 in the first 3 quarters, and they only missed 2 tackles all night. They played, and the Chiefs played a relatively clean football game too, even though, Mahomes had the early interception that spotted the Bills 6 points. But you know how the Chiefs are. They don't screw things up either. But the Bills' ability to stay out of almost any negatives throughout this entire game, they played an even cleaner game than the Chiefs played with the added element of Josh Allen's explosiveness. And it's just a really good combination they're working with. Some weeks they run the ball, some weeks it's conservative in the passing game, some weeks it's big-time throws, and then some games like this you just need Josh Allen to go out and be Josh Allen. There's going to be days like this, but it's better that they don't have to ask him to do it every week, because now you get to games like this and he can do it and you feel good about it.
Well, I mean, it feels like they do ask him to do this every week, and it's an offense that works. Like you were kind of saying, and I think the spirit of the way that you were saying it is you don't want to put all of this on Josh Allen's plate every single week, but it feels like the Bills do, and it's not like it's getting overwhelming for him. Josh Allen had 317 of the team's total 366 yards. I mean, he is this team. They remain balanced through him. They're a great passing team and a great running team, again, through him. He led the team in rushing in this game with 55 yards, and so he was able to give them a boost there because it felt like they weren't getting a ton from the rushing game, at least from an efficiency standpoint. But there's Josh Allen right there to be able to pick them up. And I agree with you. I think that my call out also would have been how cleanly this offense played. The limiting of negative plays, I thought that was a great call out by you last week to say, hey, the Buffalo Bills, we think about them as this explosive offense. We think about them as a potential feast or famine team, but in reality, this is one of the most efficient offenses that we have in the NFL, and it's not often we get explosive and efficient. Normally, you pick one or the other, but Josh Allen's such a special quarterback, and they're very clearly become comfortable with letting him just rule the entire offense. And I think a lot of people looked at that, myself included, when I picked the Bills to really take a step back this year. It was under that premise. It was under so much is going to be on Josh Allen's plate. How do I tell myself that it's going to work out for them every single week? Well, now the proof's in the pudding. Now the proof is there. We're 11 weeks into the season, and it works because he's that good, and that's why you're talking about him as an MVP candidate. So I agree with you. I think the stat that told the story in 2 very evenly matched teams that know each other very well. It's not just the fact that we're 11 weeks into the season and we sort of know all these teams' tendencies. These 2 teams know how they've played each other a lot over the last 4 to 5 years. So that also compounds and goes into it. So Allen playing the way that he has, being able to take everything on his plate and just continue to eat, full pun intended, has been awesome to watch for the Bills. And I think that they deserve to feel the feelings of this win because it feels like they have been a Super Bowl caliber team that has just come up short against a Chiefs dynasty, specifically over the last 3 years. And so they definitely deserve to feel some joy in this one, not only for how they've been playing this season, but sort of over those last 3 or 4 years. What's your most impressive or most disappointing in this game?
It's honestly, it's Josh Allen. That's the most impressive part to me because even with the 5 big-time throws and everything he does, and this was a game where he kind of had to be Superman, right? They didn't run the ball with James Cook a whole lot. He had an early touchdown, but when you talk about somehow this guy has 5 big-time throws and yet an average depth of target of only 6.8 yards, the conservative part of his game has gotten so much better. You mentioned it, the efficient part of his game has gotten so much better, taking the throws given to you. I told you the way he sees coverages in this game. When he saw zone coverage, he threw it underneath and he let his weapons work after the catch. And when he saw man coverage, he threw it over the top. And you know what I love about, you mentioned these 2 teams know each other so well. They play each other twice a year now. It's like they're in the same friggin' division, right? Mm-hmm. There was so many adjustments in this game. And that very last play, and Allen actually mentioned this after the game. They asked him, like, what did you see on that last play? What had to happen for you to have that run? And he goes, listen, they showed me cover 1 like they showed me a lot of this game. And he's absolutely right. They showed 1 They dropped into 3. Different look. The Bills ran a just full tilt mesh, expecting man coverage, didn't get it, and at that point he's just like, shit, there's nothing left for me to do. I can't, nobody's open. I can't run. I can't throw to anybody in this defense, right? And they did fool him, and he found a way to make a play anyway, probably expecting just to get to the chains and not break 3 tackles and get the touchdown, or
right.
maybe, with him anything's possible. But it's that sort of thing with Allen that I know everybody thinks about, well, sometimes he's just reckless and he runs. No, he had to take off and run there because the coverage flipped on him and nobody was open, and it really was his last option. He wants to be a pass-first quarterback, but the adjustments from what you saw from the Chiefs on defense and what the Bills were expecting and what they'd seen most of the day, and then what he saw post-snap and having to adjust to it and making the biggest play maybe of their season, because you also have the tiebreaker now over them if you tie with them at the end of it for the 1 seed and maybe playing in Buffalo and bye week and all that stuff. It just, again, shows me Josh Allen's football IQ is off the charts, all right? He's been in the league, 7 years now already? I think we forget this isn't a young guy anymore. I mean, he's still in his late 20s, but he has seen so much football and so much postseason football and so much high-level football from a defense like Steve Spagnuolo's that those are the adjustments he can make on the fly. So that run, it wasn't a draw. It wasn't anything by design. It was an adjustment he made on the fly from the coverage that he saw, knowing the Chiefs actually with the play call won the battle, but Allen's so good that he can break through that.
Special player, man. He really is. My most impressive in this game was Curtis Samuel. We were watching the game, and there were a couple of Curtis Samuel catches where I'm looking around at you guys in the office, and I'm like, this dude's got juice. This dude's turning back the clock. I haven't seen Curtis Samuel run like this in a long time. Maybe since the Carolina days, maybe since the Ohio State days. I feel like I haven't seen Curtis Samuel run the way that he did this past week. And so when you look at what Samuel did, what Khalil Shakir did, you throw in Amari Cooper, obviously, now in this lineup after the trade. Dawson Knox, no Dalton Kincaid in this one, but I loved how diverse their passing attack was and how different types of skill sets they have now. Shakir, he's sort of become their do-it-all wide receiver. Obviously, he's not going to be a big-time burner deep down the field, but short and intermediate, very clearly Khalil Shakir can produce for you. You've got Curtis Samuel, who again gives you that extra juice. I thought he played great this past weekend. Big yards after the catch guy. Amari Cooper, that veteran route runner. If you're ever seeing man coverage, you know that he's got the ability to break off and find space and get that throwing window open. Then of course you've got the tight ends, who anytime you have linebackers or safeties who can't match up against you in that week, it's going to be a good matchup for you to be able to exploit. So that's not even talking about the running backs out of the backfield that he has the option to throw the ball to. The Bills just seem like such a complete football team. And again, I think that when you throw, I didn't even mention Keon Coleman's name. Like, Keon Coleman obviously is in there as well when he is healthy. So this feels like, I didn't feel this way going into the season, but the Bills, Matt Milano's coming back, right, at some point in time. This feels like a team that absolutely has the caliber of talent to make a deep postseason run and to be one of those teams at the very end, and who knows, maybe even finally break through and get to play in that Super Bowl. That's a big shock to me because I thought it was going to be a step back season for the Bills, but hats off to Sean McDermott and how the rest of this coaching staff and team have come together this year, because they are playing some very, very good ball right now, 11 weeks into the season. My most disappointing guy on the Chiefs side of things who got picked on quite a bit, cornerback Najee Johnson, 10 targets against him, 7 catches allowed, 78 receiving yards, a touchdown, a 50.1 coverage grade. And this is a topic for the Chiefs that when we were close to the trade deadline, it's like, all right, well, the Chiefs, they've made a couple of moves so far, but are they still, going to be active to go out and get a corner? And, Jalen Watson now out probably for the season. You're basically just depending on the guys that you have in the building now. And so Najee Johnson having to step up and get into that lineup, to me, when I went back and I watched the 10 targets against him, he just doesn't look really confident out there right now. He's leaving a lot of space between him and the wide receivers because he doesn't want to get beat over the top. And that space, I mean, wide receivers are seeing that. They're eating that up. They're making their cuts and their breaks on the route appropriately, and they're keeping that throwing window open. So for Johnson, he's got to gain more confidence as the rest of the year goes on, especially if he's going to maintain that starting spot, because it was not good enough, and it was obviously an area that the Bills are comfortable picking on him. But most disappointing for you in this one.
Look, the Chiefs are not going to win a whole lot of games when Travis Kelce has 4 targets, 2 catches, and 8 yards. And a theme in their last few weeks had been, okay, he was getting hot, and they were getting him a lot of early targets in games. His last 3 games before this, Kelce had 39 targets. I mean, they were featuring him early, and then it was working off of him later in the game. The problem in this game was, and I thought the Bills did a really nice job adjusting to it on defense. They were leaning his way early. They just were getting 2 sets of eyes on Kelce at all times early. so he wouldn't get in that rhythm, and then Mahomes wouldn't get in that rhythm and making defenses react up to Kelce kind of as a decoy later in the game, because that's what had been happening. They blanketed Kelce early. Mahomes, especially, you could see it on that first interception. Noah Gray was wide open if he would have just worked off from Kelce to Gray about a half second sooner. Pressure got there, overthrew Gray, interception. But that's where he's looking early in these games right now, and the Bills shut it down early, and then Kelce just wasn't a factor the rest of the game. They're not going to win a whole lot of playoff games if Kelce has 2 catches for 8 yards. That's going to be a problem.
It's not quite like the Eagles were in, what was it, last year? Was it last year that the Eagles started 10-0, and it was like, okay, they were this undefeated team. They were
10-1 maybe,
something like that. Their record was obviously incredible, but you watch this Eagles team and you were like, I don't feel super confident in where this team is right now. We're not there with the Chiefs, and with Patrick Mahomes, I don't think we're going to get there. So I don't want people to think that I'm saying that it's identical to what the Eagles were last year. But in my opinion, the Chiefs aren't as, how should I say this, well-rounded as their record.
The flaws.
I don't want to say they're not as good as their record, because I think that's not fair either, because when you have Patrick Mahomes, the record speaks for itself. Like,
but the flaws are right in front of us.
Yes. It's not like people were posting the graphics with the stats of like Tom Brady 10 games through the undefeated season with the Patriots versus Patrick Mahomes. They're not as imposing as that Patriots team that almost went undefeated back in, what was that, 2007?
Yes.
2007. They're not quite that team, but they're also not as fraudulent as we felt like the Eagles were last year.
They're still going to win 13, 14 games.
Yes. They're still going to be in contention for the number 1 seed. But as we saw this past week, and as we have seen before, they are vulnerable. They are a more of a vulnerable team than I think they have been over the last couple of years with them winning the Super Bowl. So we move on to the next game. Bengals-Chargers. Chargers end up getting the win, thrilling win on Sunday Night Football, 34-27. What a ball game this was. It feels like every single game the Bengals play in is just the most exhilarating game we've ever seen. And unfortunately for Bengals fans, also those exhilarating games have been losses for them, and I think that they're getting a little unlucky there. I'll get back to that in a second, but let's take a look at the top 5 graded players from the Los Angeles Chargers in their big win on Sunday night. Wide receiver Ladd McConkey, rookie. 85.7 overall grade at number 1 on this list. Another rookie right behind him at number 2, Joe Alt, their offensive tackle with an 84.1. Safety Alohi Gilman with a 83.3. Offensive guard Trey Pipkins an 81.3. Offensive tackle Rashawn Slater a 79.1. Quarterback Justin Herbert in this one a 74.9. On Cincinnati's side of things, T. Higgins had a hell of a day, 90.8 overall grade. Running back Chase Brown with a 79.4. Cornerback DJ Turner with a 76.2. Cornerback Josh Newton, shout out another rookie, 71.3, stepping up big time in this game. They really needed him to keep this one close. And then edge rusher Joseph Osai with a 70.1. Joe Burrow in this game, 75.9 overall grade. Stat that told the story, Dalton. What do you got?
So at the end of it all, and we got a roller coaster game where the Chargers got out ahead at halftime, and then the Bengals came all the way back, and then situational football, and Justin Herbert was just a little bit better in the end, and they had the rushing touchdown. All right, like you mentioned, what we've seen from the Bengals all season. And I think, look, the big difference coming into this game for me between these two teams is just the Chargers have more of a football team than the Bengals do, if that makes sense. Think about it like this. Chargers had 11 players in this game grade at least a 70 on offense. Bengals had 3. All right. Chargers, say take the running game even. 21 design carries spread across 5 different players. Okay. All 22 of the Bengals design carries went to Chase Brown. All right. So we're top heavy there too. 9 players on the Chargers with multiple pressures. Bengals had 2. The Bengals just don't have the depth to beat better football teams like this. They don't, and I know situational football, and there's a lot of micro things we could talk about the Bengals, and they're 4-7, and they could be at least 7-4, if not better. But at the end of the day, we're doing this every week where it's maybe there's a couple other guys like you mentioned Josh Newton played well. He had to come in the game, and DJ Turner was pretty good, locking up Quentin Johnston for most of the game. But they don't have enough. And the Chargers being more well-rounded on both sides of the ball, they just have more ways to beat you, where again and again and again, how do the Bengals beat you? Well, they have Joe Burrow. Okay, what else?
Well, the receivers, but yeah,
well,
I mean,
right,
that goes
but
into
yeah,
it,
well,
passing
that's the
game.
idea.
Yeah.
It's just that
Yeah.
those you generally Burrow, Chase, Higgins, and Chase Brown was pretty good in this game too, and he's had his moments this year. But you're not afraid of Chase Brown, and you're really not afraid of anything other than those three guys. And again, that's what it came down to. When you look at them falling behind 27-6, Chargers are just better than them.
Yeah.
They're more well-rounded. And,
Yep.
you know, we could have arguments about this level of talent and that and the other thing, but the reality is on the Bengals, there's only three guys that scare you. And if you just don't let those guys go absolutely crazy, then you should be fine. It's just a team with just no depth on it at all.
I think the word luck is very taboo in sports because when you bring up luck, people think that means that you're insulting their talent or that they don't work hard or that they didn't do what they needed to do to deserve fortune or a win or whatever it is. But the truth of the matter is, this league is so good, you need to get lucky. The ball needs to bounce your way. Things have to go your way a little bit. And when I look at the Bengals right now, 1-6 this year in one-score games, they are unlucky. And of course, like people are going to point out, like, oh well, there's deficiencies. They're not unlucky. They're this. Like they're not diverse enough. All these kinds of things, and those are also true. I'm not trying to take anything away from that. You need to be a little bit lucky in this league to get over 500 and get into the playoffs and make playoff runs, even if it is simple as luck being not getting hurt, right? Having your full team out there. Communicating things right. Like sometimes it just feels as though when it rains, it pours. And that is the way that it feels right now with the Cincinnati Bengals. It just feels like it has been something at each point in time throughout the season. Okay, all right, the first three games. Well, they're coming out of the game slow. They're coming out of the gate slow because they didn't play a lot of guys in the preseason and they weren't ready for the first couple of games. All right, well, now T. Higgins gets hurt and you see what it's like when it's just Jamar Chase and it's not T. Higgins. Well, now the offensive line's kind of coming together and they got Amarius Mims in the lineup and all this kind. And you just go, well, it was Trey Hendrickson and then the rest of the defensive line wasn't really showing up and then the defensive line did show up and then the coverage wasn't. It has never been in lockstep with the Bengals, and it has just been bad timing, bad luck, and of course there are things that they could have been better at. Again, I'm not trying to absolve them of total blame, but perfection being the bar is unfair for a football team. Even the best teams in the NFL, they're not perfect. They play well to a high level, and you put yourself in position to where when the ball bounces your way, you are there to capitalize on it. It does not feel like the Bengals are getting the ball to bounce their way very often this season. It feels like they're having to work to get close, and then it's those areas where team building and coaching and things like that are bringing them down. The ball is not bouncing their way enough to try to make up for it. And so they are getting unlucky, and I think that's really putting a magnifying glass on a lot of their deficiencies. I think the lack of depth is a big one for that. But yeah, when I look at this Bengals team, it's just how many close games are they going to be in? They absolutely had a chance to win this game, just like they had a chance to beat the Baltimore Ravens twice. And just throughout this season, it feels like there's always been they were right there. And it kind of is a shame. I know Joe Burrow is very frustrated. I saw a couple of clips of him after the game, and I read some quotes from him after the game, and I think somebody asked him straight up, hey, is this the most frustrating season you've ever had? And he's like, yeah. And they're like, why? And he's like, it's pretty self-explanatory. We're in a lot of one-score games, and we can't win them. We're too many games below 500 now, and basically now they're at the point where if they don't run the table over these last 6 games they have, they're not going to make the playoffs. The AFC playoff picture is almost locked up unless they just go undefeated the rest of the way, and that's sort of unrealistic to think, even as high potent as their offense is. So to me, it's just a matter of course, there's a lot of team building things and depth and deficiencies that we have talked about here. Some of the coaching blunders that they've had throughout the year, the offensive line not playing well, the run game being very hot and cold, all of that I think goes into it. But I think a factor that we also have to talk about is this team's just unlucky this year. It's just not the Bengals' year for as much as they are doing things well. What about the most impressive or most disappointing? Where do you want to start?
And right before that, something I just kind of sort of came up with in my head. You know what luck in sports is, Trevor? Mm-hmm. It's 50-50 situations going for or against you 70% of the time.
Sure.
And that's where we're at. Because of that 1-6 record. If we're roughly 50-50, they're the 6 or 7 seed in the playoffs.
Yes.
That's it. If they're 4-3 in the
even with that lack of depth, even with the offensive line not playing well, even with all those things, if they're just a coin flip,
a handful of plays, 3 to 5 plays from being like the 5 seed in the AFC playoff picture. But that's just the way it goes. And sometimes, you know what? Yeah, do they have to change the process of it? Yeah, but these things happen. Like, these things happen on the good side to 3 or 4 teams a year, and on the bad side to 3 or 4 teams a year, and they're just unfortunately a part of that. But they do need to get better. But I'll tell you what, a team that got better in the offseason was the Chargers. This rookie class, it's performing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
a
unreal.
good football team.
Joe Alt, let's start with Joe. I'm going just with the whole group of rookies that played in this game. Joe Alt, an 84.1 overall grade in this game, allowed 1 pressure all night in a high-scoring game. He's already like a top 15 tackle in the league right now. It's amazing what he's doing. Ladd McConkey just took this game over in the fourth quarter. 6 catches, 123 yards, 84.2 receiving grade. Cam Hart, 81 coverage grade on the outside. He was a day 3 pick at corner. Tareeb Still, 2 catches, 18 yards out there at corner, playing a lot of – they got rookie corners playing a lot of snaps. And we've talked about this defense. Are they the most talented defense you've ever seen? No, but they're playing so much more fundamentally sound under Jesse Minter. I've told you, it looks like last year's Michigan defense. They just don't screw anything up for the most part. And, look, it's hard to defend the Bengals, and they gave up a few touchdowns late, but they also had this team down to 6 points until late in the third quarter. Their defense is incredible. The rookie class has just been amazing. And we had a feeling because remember the debate was 5th overall, Joe Alt or Malik Neighbors. There was people arguing both ways, and they took Joe Alt because, honestly, I thought he was the safest pick in the draft. I was like, this guy's going to be great. He's just great. That's how it is. But they had a plan in the second round to go get McConkey. They used most of the rest of the draft on defensive pieces. They have put together such a good rookie class on this Charger team that it is supercharged their chances of contention, right? And I don't know that they're a Super Bowl contender. I don't know that they're explosive enough for that, but they're going to the playoffs. With Justin Herbert playing the way he's playing, this rookie class developing, and the way their defense is playing, they're going to the playoffs. I've pretty much no doubt about it now.
It feels like they're on that road that kind of the Lions were on. What was it, like 2 years ago, where like Dan Campbell and the rest of that front office, they were building things from the ground up, and they've done so by drafting really well, getting the right players onto the team, and it feels like the Chargers are already sort of laying the building blocks for that. My most impressive in this game, the title that I have for this is Justin Herbert's becoming Josh Allen. You know, and it's a crazy thing to say because we just got done ringing the praises of Josh Allen and how much of an alien he is, an MVP player. But again, it's the same thing. Look at it. Accounted for 363 of the team's 435 total yards. His 65 rushing yards we saw last night. Huge rushes for this team. When you don't account for him, his foot is fully healthy now. This dude can run. This dude can pick up first downs. He can pick up chunk plays. He had the 3 big-time throws and the 2 turnover-worthy plays. I think he's up to, like 16 big-time throws and 4 turnover-worthy plays over the last 5 weeks. I mean, he's just playing such an incredible brand of football. His talent level is up there with the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think that there are still people out there, and I know there are still people out there, because when we did our top quarterback rankings, right, in the summer, Justin Herbert was 5. He was 5, and people go like, "What has Justin Herbert done? Like, how is he this high on this list? Justin Herbert hasn't done anything." Guys, Justin Herbert's an elite quarterback. Justin Herbert is in like that. If you want to say that Mahomes is in a tier of his own, okay, whatever. So Mahomes will be tier 1. Justin Herbert's in tier 2. He's in there with Lamar. He's in there with Josh Allen. He's in there with Joe Burrow. He is capable of doing these things. And I think now that they have an offensive line and a coaching staff that is truly allowing him to play with all of his talents, we saw this last night. And we have seen it over the last 5 weeks in particular since he has really become fully healthy coming off of that foot injury. This dude is unbelievable. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and he's proven it now. And I can't wait for the Chargers to get into the playoffs because I think that he's going to be able to put on a show because he is that talented. So honestly, my most impressive is just the fact that Justin Herbert feels like he is becoming a version of Josh Allen, which is awesome to watch.
And you know what's crazy is everybody wants to judge him. It's only his, 5th year in the league. Justin Herbert's 26 years old. What are we fully judging this guy's legacy for at 26 years old? It's like I mean, I know people like to do it with quarterbacks and they want to either keep him or dump him as quick as they can, but he's 26 and he's already done. I mean, he's off to one of the best starts of a career in NFL history, and I think people just kind of forget that because of, well, they're the Chargers and everything that happened under the previous regime and playoff losses and just kind of bad mojo over there. But no, you're absolutely right. He's been playing like a top 5 quarterback all season. most disappointing real quick. I just have the Bengals defense. I just want to throw one more number at you. I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. There is kind of a hard split, though, when they play the poorer teams of the league versus the good ones. They've played 5 last-place teams this year, okay? Patriots, Browns, Giants, Raiders, and Panthers, I think it's something like that. They have a 78 defensive grade in those games, which would be a top 5 defense. It's like the 4th best in football if that was stretched out. And against the other 6 teams on their schedule, they would a 49.9, which would be the lowest graded defense in football. They just, against relatively good offenses, it's just not working. So it's absolutely, yes, the one-score games, the bad luck, it does play a part. Their record should be better based on the situations they've been in and how it's gone with the coin flip stuff. But they have to overhaul this defense in the offseason.
My most disappointing, really quick, is just the Bengals' offensive line. 3rd highest pressure percentage allowed this week. 21 pressures allowed, which was the most in the NFL in Week 11. Obviously, we have 1 game remaining, but so far it's the most in the NFL. Only offensive linemen, with a pressure percentage below 5% was Alex Kappa. Everybody else had an above 5% pressure percentage in this game. So that's just not good enough either. I mean, you got to be a lot better on the offensive side of the trenches. Ravens-Steelers, next game I want to hit here. The Pittsburgh Steelers come away victorious 18-16 in this matchup. Another very close divisional matchup between these two teams. We'll take a look at the Pittsburgh Steelers' top 5 graded players in this one since they got the win. Linebacker Peyton Wilson, number 1 on the list. Rookie standing out, baby. 92.4. Cornerback Joey Porter Jr. with an 86.4. Defensive tackle Cameron Hayward with an 85.7. Tight end Darnell Washington with an 84.8. Linebacker Patrick Queen had a hell of a day, a 79.3. Quarterback Russell Wilson with a 61.3 in this game. On Baltimore's side of things, linebacker Roquan Smith. Big linebacker day. I feel like, AFC North divisional matchups, just linebackers. Throwback football. They're at the top of the list.
18-16, of course.
Yeah, honestly, from the scoreboard alone, you could have figured that the linebackers played well in this one. Roquan Smith at the top of the list for the Ravens, 83.8. Cornerback Tre'Davious White with an 81.8. Safety Kyle Hamilton with a 78.8. Safety Ardarius Washington, a 73.0. And then tight end Isaiah Likely with a 70.1. Lamar Jackson in this game, a 63.7. Dalton, what do you got here with this one?
You didn't mention there, we had a revenge game alert.
From Patrick Queen?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm going to talk about Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen's my most impressive. I can just hit it.
If you wanted to,
right,
I could go there.
Patrick Queen, 79.3.
We got a revenge game here.
Patrick Queen, revenge game, 79.3 overall grade, 80.5 coverage grade, 0 missed tackles, led the team with 10 tackles. So that was a good performance for him. Obviously, talked about the forced fumble as well. It was just a really good game for him. He was flying around. He was very motivated. Felt like he was all over the field. And then obviously Peyton Wilson as well next to him, the rookie, playing very, very well too. So Patrick Queen was just my most impressive player. So I was going to shout him out anyway.
And you mentioned the biggest play he made of the day, that forced fumble before the end of the half that got the Steelers another field goal, which I'll get to also. But this game, I think a lot of it was about being played at the tempo the Steelers wanted it to, because they're still, whoever's at quarterback, they're a defensive team that wants to beat you up and get in these low-scoring games. And we got to be real, the Ravens made a lot of mistakes in this game. Derrick Henry fumbles on the first drive. That leads to a Steeler field goal. The Isaiah Likely fumble that Queen forced, that leads to a field goal. Justin Tucker missed 2 of his own field goals in the first half, right? The Peyton Wilson interception late in the game, that was just an incredible play. And it wasn't, we don't even have it down, I don't believe, as a turnover-worthy play, because it wasn't that bad a throw. It was a little short, but the way he fought for that football, that interception.
No ACLs.
With no ACLs. I couldn't do anything near that with 2, I think. I haven't checked, actually. I don't know if I have ACLs or not, but they didn't make me take a physical before they hired me here. So, 12 penalties for 80 yards for the Ravens. Mm-hmm. It's kind of unusual for them, right? The Steelers had the ball. All of this leads to the Steelers having the ball for 36 minutes and being able to control the clock.
That's a great point.
With their defensive line.
Yep.
Control it, just a little bit at a time, grinding it out on their offensive line, kicking field goals all day. That's cool. Mike Tomlin's content with that. We've seen him do it in playoff games. Maybe not content, but a win is a win, right? Mm-hmm. But the Ravens, there was
no coach in the NFL is more comfortable winning ugly than Mike Tomlin.
Right.
Because he and I don't mean this as an insult. Like, he does it a lot. He can play all sorts of different brands of football and win football games.
It's the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, 100%.
That's just the way it is. And would they like to score 40 a week?
Sure, of course they would.
But he knew in this game, and they knew the way they had to play, especially the way they were ripping for the football, right, against this team. They weren't going to win a game in the 30s against the Ravens. That's not a thing. That's not what they're going to do.
It's not how their identity is set up this year.
But this game was played with the Steelers forcing the Ravens into mistakes and playing a game that works to their tempo and their identity.
Mm-hmm. There is a PFF stat that I pulled from the preview show. So if anybody was watching the preview show last week, I'm about to be repetitive here, but I found it because I thought it was very topical, and it goes into exactly what we said, talking about Mike Tomlin specifically, just being a damn good football coach. Lamar versus the Steelers. So this is obviously before what we saw this past weekend. So the Ravens had not played the Steelers yet this year. So for the last 5 years, so from 2019 to 2023, Lamar Jackson versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, he's missed a couple of those games, I think due to injury for one of them, and then the Ravens were resting their starters, I think, for the final week of the season when they were playing the Steelers. So it's not like he's played all of these games, but the sample size that we had going into this week, Lamar only had one game where he had a passing grade against the Steelers above 53. Mike Tomlin, the entire rest of the time, the entire other 5-year stretch, one game where he has had a passing grade above 53. And it was an elite performance. I want to tip my cap to Lamar. It was, I think, like a 92.4 or something. It was incredible. He also had one game with a passing grade below 40 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. 2 games in the 50s, and then the passing grade yesterday, 57.0. I think another nugget here is that when you look at these teams, his 60.6 passing grade against the Steelers over the last 5 years, cumulatively, is the second lowest passing grade versus any opponent that he has played multiple times. The only team in which Lamar has a lower passing grade is against the Kansas City Chiefs. That's it. And then a 57.0 passing grade yesterday, that only brings that number down because it was a 60.6 average. Now you're bringing that game down a little. All that to say, Mike Tomlin plays Lamar Jackson so well. Nobody plays Lamar Jackson well. You give Lamar Jackson that many times to beat you, he's going to work basically every team, every coordinator in the NFL. Steve Spagnuolo, Mike Tomlin. That's it. He whoops on everybody else by far. I mean, that was, I feel like, by far his lowest passing grade against for teams that he has played multiple times. And the Steelers just know how to make this guy so uncomfortable. You talking about playing a brand of football that the Steelers wanted to play, certainly all game long and on the offensive side of things, they know how to make Lamar incredibly uncomfortable. There were throws in yesterday's game where we're watching the game, we're like, Lamar doesn't miss that. Certainly not this year doesn't miss that. They had him, I don't want to quite say like seeing ghosts, but a lot less confident than Lamar Jackson typically is playing a football game, especially for an opponent that he has seen multiple times throughout his career. So just a hat tip to, once again, the Steelers defense, Mike Tomlin, and how they play one of the most unstoppable players in the league, because it feels like we get that more often than we don't with Lamar. And when he plays the Steelers, they know how to beat him year in and year out.
They're not afraid of him.
No,
absolutely
absolutely
not.
not.
Those two teams you just mentioned, they're not afraid of him. They believe in what they have, and I think it helps for the Steelers too. You got all those big monsters up front. I'm getting an update on my number here, but the Steelers' defensive line came into the week. Actually, I'm getting it now. Their defensive line came into the week graded 10 points higher than any other defensive line in the league. That's down to 6. The Browns had a really good day. This was, this is a tougher game against Baltimore. But their D-line is 6. They're graded 6 points higher than it's the best defensive line in the league by far. Mm-hmm. It's not even close. With TJ, with Cam Hayward on the inside, with Nick Herbig, with Keanu Benton, with I saw Isaiah Loudermilk making plays yesterday. I mean,
shout out Wisconsin.
It's talented. Yeah, they just draft every guy from Wisconsin, and they're great. You're right. It's just ridiculous how good their defensive line. They're the one D line in the whole league right now that just controls an entire football game. It's amazing what they do, and I think that's a big piece of it when you still talk about the Ravens' offensive line. It's gotten better lately, but I don't know that it's an elite unit yet. They're still figuring some things out with some newer starters and shifting things around. The Steelers are the hardest team in football to block, and I think that's where that starts with that rivalry.
Most disappointing for me is Zay Flowers, simply because it was a very close game. Obviously, it was a 2-point game, 18-16. Zay Flowers in this one had 2 drops, caught just 2 of his 6 targets. Now, not all of that was on him, but obviously the drop is 56.4 receiving grade. And this is kind of the game where when you look at the stat sheet and you look at the receiving yards that the Ravens had, it was like, if we had one more of those Zay Flowers catches, maybe that's the difference. And he is supposed to be that guy in this receiving room that's really supposed to be more of a constant for them. And so it's disappointing because, again, we sit here and we go, all right, well, in a game where the Ravens weren't really allowed to do what they wanted to do, especially running the football. Derrick Henry wasn't as explosive this week as he has been in the past. We figured that the Steelers' defensive line would be up to the task. Could you get those 1 or 2 extra Zay Flowers catches that are the reason why you bring a player like that in? We just didn't get those catches in this game, so it was disappointing for me because that could have been the big difference for the Ravens. But what was disappointing for you?
Disappointing for me was the Ravens' run blocking. They got dominated up front in this game by the Steelers' defensive line. 4 of their 5 offensive linemen under a 60 in run blocking, a 48.8 run blocking grade as a unit. Only 3 explosive runs for the Ravens, which is unusual for them, and 2 of them were on Lamar Jackson keeps on read options. So they really didn't create any space inside. On the interior, especially Cam Hayward dominated this game. And then real quick, third phase, most impressive for me. Well, Steelers have one of the best kickers in football.
It has to be Boswell because they scored 0 points without him.
6 for 6. 3 for 3 from 50 plus. I mean, he's making big kicks in a place that's notoriously hard to kick in as well. Pittsburgh's one of the hardest places to kick in the league. 29 of 30 this year, Trevor, and he's our second highest graded kicker for the season behind Brandon Aubrey, who's playing tonight, obviously. But and 9 of 10 from 50 plus. Chris Boswell is a weapon. And, well, let's be real. He was their best offensive weapon in this game, you could argue. I mean, that's a big-time performance. I actually love the quote from Mike Tomlin after the game. I don't know if you saw this. He said someone asked him about Boswell and having a weapon like that, and he goes, yeah, I'm kind of sick of him winning special teams player of the week because I want to score touchdowns. He's like, he goes, he's going to win it again this week, and I kind of don't want him to win it because that means we're kicking too many field goals, and that's just how Mike Tomlin is. But I thought that was a great quote. But really, Boswell making all those kicks, again, in a hard place to kick in, and he does it week in and week out. One of the best kickers in football and accounted for all their points in this game.
Drake in the chat's asking, how is Justin Tucker not the most disappointing? He could have been. Missed another 2 kicks in this game, and Justin Tucker just is not the kicker that he used to be. This
is going to be a question come playoff time.
Well, Father Time it has come for Justin Tucker, and it's sad, but Gordon McGinnis, who is a Ravens fan, who works at PFF, he was saying at the beginning of the game, and I hadn't thought of this until he pointed it out, he's like, I think Tucker doesn't have the leg strength anymore, so he's pulling kicks. Like he's trying to put more sort of like he's trying to like put a little bit more juice and a little bit more angle into it. So he's sort of like hooking these kicks because he's not as comfortable just letting it fly, thinking that he's got the kicking power to be able to do it because he's just been doing it for so long. So he's not that kicker that he used to be in his younger age. And in order to try to make up for it, he's probably putting a little bit more tension and a little bit more of an angle in there to see if he can almost like allow it to like hook, like give him some extra strength, but that's pushing the ball a little bit further. So right when he said that, the first field goal that he missed was exactly that. It was him, missing missing to that side. So I think that it's something worth noting moving forward here for that one. Green Bay Packers versus the Chicago Bears. What'd you say when the Bears had the lead in the fourth quarter?
Oh, I said in the middle of the third quarter.
Mm-hmm. What'd you say?
I told you guys, I said the Packers are going to win this game by 1. This is how Packers.
He did. He said that.
I lived in Chicago for 5 years.
He said
and
that.
I watched all these games, and they're all. It's to some degree. Right now, every Packers-Bears game is the same. They're all the same.
And
it's this type of stuff.
And it was on Sunday. Green Bay Packers win the game 20-19. They, in fact, win the game by 1 point. We'll look at the top 5 graded players for the Green Bay Packers. Wide receiver Christian Watson at the top of the list with an elite 93.0 in this game. Edge rusher Rashawn Gary with a 79.0. Offensive tackle Zach Thomas, 73.8. Wide receiver Jaden Reed, a 73.6. And then running back Josh Jacobs with a 71.5. Did you see that play where he's like one-on-one with Jalen Johnson? And he basically, like, you can almost, like, see him mid-play. I can't remember exactly what he says, but essentially he's like, come on, like, come tackle me. Like, come on. Like the play, he's staring him down. The play's going on, and he's basically just giving him the, yeah. Come on, let's do this kind of a play, which I love that.
He just wants an Oklahoma drill is what he wants.
Essentially, yeah. And I would not bet against Josh Jacobs in any sort of Oklahoma drill against anybody that maybe wouldn't have, 80 more pounds on him. But even then, I don't know if I'd bet against him. Quarterback Jordan Love in this game is 73.7. On Chicago's side of things, offensive tackle Braxton Jones was the top-graded player with an 82.0. Wide receiver Romo Dunze had a really nice day, 76.2 overall grade. Center Colton Shelton with a 73.7. And offensive tackle Darnell Wright right after that with a 71.0. Edge rusher DeMarcus Walker rounding things out at number 5 with a 70.9. Quarterback Caleb Williams in this game. Great day from Caleb Williams, and I'll get to that in a second, but 85.2 overall grade in this one, albeit in a loss. Stat that told the story here, Dalton.
Okay, so you know what's weird is twice this week, and I'm not that old. I'm only 30. I haven't watched as much football as some people, or even as much as you per se.
What are you calling me old?
It's all relative. Anyway,
feel great. Thank you.
So the Packers. So this was a low-scoring game-ish because it was just slow-paced. All right. The Packers, other than a kneel down at the end of the first half, only had the ball 6 times. I think the Bears 7, which is weird. It was a slow-paced game. It was 20-19, and what shocked me was just how darn efficient the Packers' offense was. It's the second time this weekend that I've seen a game like this, and I'll tell you the first one in a second because you're going to like it. Packers only ran 43 plays in this game. All right. 19 of them resulted in a first down or a touchdown, and 12 of them were explosive plays. All right. You want to know where I got a flashback to like 24 hours earlier looking at numbers of your Florida Gators beating LSU on Saturday because they did something like run a whole 44 plays. Yeah, you get one a year, we know. You get 44 plays, and they had like 11 explosive plays, and I was like, wow, I've never seen this before. And then the next day, the Green Bay Packers do it. 6 drives, 3 touchdowns. There was a punt in the first quarter, I think the second drive of the game, and 2 other drives stopped inside the 10. They were so efficient offensively in this game. 8.5 yards a play.
That's very good.
The Bears holding them to 20, I promise you, was not because the Bears played very good defense in this game. This game was just slow-paced, and both teams were milking the clock. The Packers should have probably scored 35, and if this game was more up-tempo, might have scored 50.
Yeah, normally when you get a number like that of averaging that many yards per play, you're talking about hitting a bunch of explosives that probably would have like turned into touchdowns, which would have lit up the scoreboard a little bit better.
That's not far, if not right around where like the Lions were at this week, and they scored 52. The Packers at this level of efficiency could have scored a lot more points in this. Again, they got stopped twice inside the 10. That's about the only time the Bears made a stand was twice inside their own 10-yard line. But the Packers were just so efficient offensively in this game. And of course, it just makes you feel like, well, eventually they're going to break through, right? And that's why I told you, I'm like, they're going to get another lead in this game because A, the Bears defense is not playing well, and B, well, it's Packers-Bears. It's just that's just going to happen. It's almost like when you talked about last week about the voodoo in the Superdome. I'm like,
we got more of it this week.
We sure do. But Packers-Bears, it's just like you just always get this feeling like the Packers are going to break through. And there was offensive numbers behind it that were like they're going to break through. Teams like this don't only score 13, 14 points when they're playing like this, but 8.5 yards per play is crazy. And they only ran 43 plays. I just couldn't believe 19 of them were first downs or touchdowns. That's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, my most disappointing, I'll just piggyback off of you really quick. Bears coverage, 47.1 coverage grade as a team. No starting corner had a coverage grade above 56.5 in this game. You mentioned it's not, you talk about the lack of points from the Green Bay Packers. Oh, it's not like the Bears were doing a ton to really stop them, and that was true. This team just did not play well this past week from an efficiency standpoint on the Bears side of things. And they just got to play a lot better than that if they're going to beat the Packers. So that was my most disappointing, is this is a unit that they're supposed to win on the backs of. The coverage, the secondary in particular, I think is a unit that's really strong and really talented, but they just did not play well against the Packers. I know that's your most disappointing as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to add one more number in there, and it's been a thing that's kind of been a trend lately. I don't know if it's because of the Jaquan Brisker injury, the concussion, him being out, but the first
doesn't help.
The first 7 weeks of the season, they were second in the NFL in coverage grade, and the last 4, they're dead last. They have a 44.9 coverage grade over the last 4 weeks.
I didn't realize they were dead last.
They are dead last over the last 4 weeks. If their secondary's not rolling, their pass rush still isn't great. Their run defense is okay. It's not great. If they can't cover, because they were looking like they had one of the best young secondaries in the NFL, if this goes to, I mean, you just can't give up 8.5 yards per play. It's just not a thing you can do. And if the secondary's starting to fall apart now, you have a serious problem with their defense too.
Seth told the story for me. I'm actually going to go on a positive here. I'm going to talk about the Bears offense. I'm going to talk about Thomas Brown, who's now the offensive coordinator, play caller for this team now that Shane Waldron is not the offensive coordinator. It looked a lot better. I talked about it was a great day from Caleb Williams, 85.3 passing grade. I believe that's his second highest single game at passing grade that he has had this season outside of the London game where they played very, very well as well. When you look at just the last couple of weeks, it obviously has not been pretty for the Chicago Bears. And it was just so night and day different. I feel like the confidence level from everybody in the offense was much different. Now, Thomas Brown specifically, he was the offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers last year when Frank Reich was there. And when the Panthers started 0-6, they went into their bye week. They made a change at the bye week. They said, okay, Frank Reich, he's like, all right, I'm going to give play calling duties to Thomas Brown. He's going to take the play calling duties from me. So then there were 3 games after that because they had the bye week in week 7. It was week 8, week 9, week 10. In those 3 weeks, Carolina Panthers, negative EPA per play all around. They scored 15, 13, and 13 points in that stretch. And then Frank Reich ended up taking play calling duties back. There's a couple of different theories of like why he did that, right? And maybe the writing was on the wall. Hey, this Carolina Panthers team isn't doing very well. Frank Reich, if he's going to get fired, it's kind of like, all right, I'm going to go out on my own sword kind of a thing. So maybe that's the reason why. I also wonder, Frank Reich talked very highly of Thomas Brown last year. And so I also wonder if he took play calling back from Thomas Brown almost to protect him, to say, look, it's not going to look pretty for this offense with you as a play caller. It doesn't really matter what plays you call. So I'm going to try to save you from this situation, right? Remember when Frank Reich got fired and Ejiro Evero could have been the interim head coach, and Ejiro was like, nope, you're not putting my name on this dumpster fire. That's not happening. I'm not putting that on my resume. I wonder if maybe Frank Reich did that with Thomas Brown and he realized that he was a bright mind and this was going to kind of like tarnish his resume. So anyways, all that to say, it didn't look great when he was the play caller last year with the Panthers. But nothing really did in Carolina. This past week for the Chicago Bears, second highest EPA per play of any game this season was this past week. When you look at some statistics from this past week, Caleb's second fastest time to throw. So whatever they were calling, he was very confident in seeing it very quickly. So they were getting all the ball out of his hands, which is very nice. Highest rate of play action that they have had so far this season, which I like that they were throwing more of that into. And then the third highest completion percentage of the season from Caleb Williams. So it just felt like there was less thinking and a lot more freedom to just go out and play from Caleb. That is the vibe that we got there. 6 targets, 6 catches for DJ Moore in the first half alone. So you're getting DJ Moore back involved. So obviously they lose the game, and it's not great. It doesn't feel good. But moving forward, clearly the way the players talked about how the offense was sort of night and day different than when Shane Waldron was there, I'm excited to watch this Bears team moving forward. With Shane Waldron as the offensive coordinator, I thought it was a very real possibility they could get swept in this division because they had their whole division right in front of them, 0-6. I don't know if it's as much as a guarantee now, seeing how well the offense played. The defense got to play better, but wanted to shout out Thomas Brown. I thought he made Caleb Williams a much more confident player in this game, which is tough to do first game from a coaching change. So I do like some of the changes that we saw, specifically the time to throw being down for Caleb Williams and the play action rate being a lot higher, being willing to go and do those little things that really help you identify an offense and really just keep a defense on their heels.
Yeah, I'm going to add more layers to that because, I obviously could have taken a Caleb Williams or a Braxton Jones. Like, there was several players here who played well in the Bears offense, and it was at least a smooth operation this week. And their offense was good enough to win this game. You just had a blocked field goal at the end, and that's unfortunate. But a couple of things when the Bears have looked good this season on offense. They've gotten under center, okay, in this game. 24 snaps under center, third most of the season. They've run outside. They are not a between-the-tackles running team. And Thomas Brown is maybe the guy that when they were running off tackle more, maybe he's the one who had influence on this, and now he's just buying into it totally. This game, between the tackles, 8 carries, 16 yards. Off tackle, 21 carries for 114 yards. They're an outside running team. And DeAndre Swift, let's be real, has always been an outside runner. That's the way that goes. Mm-hmm. You mentioned DJ Moore, getting him involved. 7 screens the Bears ran in this game. The previous 3 weeks, they ran 3 total. Design touches for a good set of weapons outside. And then the other thing about Caleb Williams, not only being instinctual in the passing game, but they ran 8 read options in this game, and that was the most of the season. Caleb Williams got involved as a runner, both as a design runner and as a scrambler. He's a threat. He's a wicked athlete. Like, he is a serious problem in the open field, and he can take off and get first downs and touchdowns at any time with his feet, right? He made Caleb Williams more comfortable. You mentioned it. It's just and working to the strengths of the entire offense. This is what their offense should look like right now. this is what's worked. If they continue to run off tackle and they continue to run some of the RPOs and screens and a lot of stuff he ran at USC, cool. Maybe he's not ready to just have a whole game of full field progressions. Most rookies aren't. That's not how it works, right? Mm-hmm. Even in Washington, they're just designing a lot of stuff for Jaden Daniels, or Sean Payton knows how to make Bo Nix's life easier. That should be the point of this, is to make a rookie quarterback's life easier. And that's exactly what Thomas Brown did in this game. So I went into the tape watch thinking, okay, I'm going to pick a player. I know he's going to talk about the OC, and everyone's going to talk about the OC change, but that's really what it was.
No, it was.
It's working. It's working to the optimal strengths of your team.
Yep.
DJ Moore's an after-the-catch guy. Get him screens. I don't know that it's that hard. And I know drawing up the concepts and X's and O's week to week, yeah, it's hard. That's why they make hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. But you have to work to your strengths. And if you don't, like before, they just weren't, then you're going to lose ball games, and you're not going to score, and you're going to score 3 points against the Patriots. That's how it works. So at least their offense was a smooth operation, and it was just more comfortable for Caleb to work in.
My most impressive, I'll end it on this one. Christian Watson played very well. I think we got to give him the hat tip, right? 4 targets, 4 catches, 150 receiving yards, a 60-yard pass where he had a diving pass, was able to get up a lot of yards after the catch on that one. So it was just great to see that from Christian Watson. 92.7 receiving grade in this game. And, you know, I think that we have been wanting someone to really step up for this Green Bay receiving room outside of Jayden Reed. It feels like Jayden Reed is the guy that you can consistently depend upon, but Christian Watson really showed up, and they need him to. We went into the year talking about how deep this receiving room was for the Green Bay Packers, and it feels like it's been Jayden Reed at the top, and it's like, okay, well, he's solidified himself as their top option. I think even these other guys need to play a little bit better, even if they're just the wide receiver 2 behind Jayden Reed. And so, obviously, a great day from Christian Watson. It was good to see him go off like this. Best part about football season, guys, it is checking out the post-game stats, right? Which wideout scored more than 2 touchdowns, which quarterbacks threw more than 300 yards. If you think you know what's going to happen before kickoff, you got to play Pick 6 by DraftKings, an official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. You just download the DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and select between 2 to 6 players. Choose whether they will have more or less of a single stat. It is that simple. We were on a stressful journey last night with the Cincinnati Bengals with the wide receiver overs in that game, and we ended up hitting quite a bit of them. I will say we did.
It's a good process.
It was a good process. We were there. The thought process. We didn't bring home the biggest prize, but it was, like you said, a good process.
We had fun.
That's
what it's about.
We did have fun, and there were a lot of little victories in there in between, which was a lot of fun. For all the first-time Pick 6 players, check this out. New customers play $5 on your first Pick 6 set. You get 50 in Pick 6 credits. It's all right there. So, again, if you guys are seeing this on the screen, if you think that there is some sort of wide receiver or running back or whatever it is where you look at their stat line and you say, man, I think this matchup's a lot more juicy than that. I think they're going to have a bigger day than that. I think they're going to have more than that stat there. Or if you think that they're underestimating the challenge that's in front of them and you think, no way, they're going to have that many. They're going way less than that. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use that promo code PFF. It's promo code PFF for new customers to play $5 on your first Pick 6 set. You get 50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Pick 6 is not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. You hinted this one a little earlier in the show. Lions-Jags. Yikes. 52-6. Detroit takes the win. I think everybody thought they were going to take the win. 13.5 line going into the game. It's funny, a buddy of mine, we're in a little betting pool, and he actually, I think he teased it up to like 15.5 for the Lions. He's like, I'm not afraid. He's like, the Jags are not going to stand a chance against them. And he texted our group afterwards, and he's like, should have teased it to 45. Should have spotted the Jags 45 in this game. Just, man, incredible performance by the Detroit Lions. Another one that just solidifies that they are on a potential Super Bowl path. They are one of the best teams in the NFL. It's a joy to watch once again, unless you're a Jags fan. Unless you want changes. And so, in that case, if you are a Jags fan, let's look at the top 5 graded players for the Detroit Lions. Wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown with a 92.4 in this game. Guard Kevin Zeitler at 90.6. Safety Kirby Joseph, just an incredible year from all the safeties in Detroit, but Kirby Joseph in particular. 89.9. Center Frank Ragnow an 83.5. Linebacker Malcolm Rodriguez an 80.9. Jared Goff in this one, an elite 93.5 in this game. On Jacksonville side of things, offensive tackle Anton Harrison a 78.0. Offensive tackle Walker Little a 77.9. Wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. 75.3. Edge rusher Trayvon Walker 72.8. And then a number 5 to round things out, tight end Evan Ingram with a 72.0. Mac Jones in this game still playing for the injured Trevor Lawrence, a 53.0. Stat that told the story here, Dalton.
I mean, there's many of them, but I think now 52-6 is extreme. But I think it's kind of like what you talked about going into it, how this is clearly one of, if not the best team in football, right? Against a team that is just massively struggling, and they have all year now 2-9. And, you know, Lions came into this game as our highest graded team overall. Jags came in 19th. Now they're 23rd, and they're playing without Trevor Lawrence. And again, 23rd may not even do it justice. Kind of leaning towards the, a couple of dominant efforts and 2 wins. But this was just a beating. I mean, there's no other. We could pull every number we want. I think interesting stat. I think I have to credit CBS for showing this one. The Lions are the first team in the regular season to score a touchdown on their first 7 drives since that 07 Patriots team. That's how they're rolling on offense.
Wasn't their drive chart like 7 touchdowns to start the game,
a field goal,
and then
I think they kneel
down?
Yeah.
Right? They scored on every possession other than the kneel down.
It was just, by any number we can pull out right now, one of the best offensive performances really like in the history of the game, especially the team. They set their franchise total yardage record. Is that right?
I didn't see that, but
I think they did. It was 600.
If you said that with a little more confidence, I'd be like, oh, yeah, of course.
640. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's about making them believe it. It's not about, we're just Lions here. We just make you believe it. But no, I mean, this was maybe the best offensive performance you're going to see from any team all year.
Yeah.
It's just no other way about it.
I agree. I mean, we could be pretty quick with this one. Jags defense, that's the stat that told the story. 28.7 points per game. I know we're like everybody wants to talk about the offensive struggles, all that kinds of stuff. This is a bad defense. This is a really bad defense. 28.7 points per game allowed. That's 30th in the NFL. The only 2 teams that are worse are the Dallas Cowboys and the Carolina Panthers. That's it. They're 32nd in EPA per play allowed this season. This is one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So it is a total organizational failure. The roster is not constructed the way that it needs to be. The execution is not there. There is clearly not a synergy between the front office and the coaching staff, and certainly you throw the players into that mix. I mean, it feels like the players don't really believe in the coaching staff that is there. I don't know how much the coaching staff believes in the people that are bringing the players in. It just feels like it's a total organizational failure at this point for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that's how you get to a score like 52-6. I mean, this is not a by accident type of a thing, and I know they don't have Trevor Lawrence, but Trevor Lawrence don't play defense. If you want to say that, okay, well, the Jags scored 20, they'd still get beat by 30 in this game. And I think that's a major point of this, is it's not like, well, if Trevor came back and, if the offensive line were a little bit better and if they had like another good receiving weapon, it's like, again, you could say all you want there. This is a bad football team.
That's where I was at the end of last year. I was like, okay, if they block some people, they're good. They started 8-3, but now, right. And I'm real quick. I'm just gonna get on their defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen for a minute. I have all year, and it's still the case. I don't know why the Jags run more man coverage than any team in the league. And in this game, unless they're
trying to run zone in practice and they can't get the chemistry down, because zone coverage is a big chemistry thing, right? You got to have faith in the guy next to you. He's got to be in the right spot. He's got to drop a certain way. He's got to be able to pass off routes. I mean, they might be bad at it in practice.
That might be the case. And
it's easier to just play cat coverage, right?
Well, usually teams that are bad, eventually they get to a point where you go, okay, we're just going to sit in quarters. Don't let anything over your head.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And they ran 54% cover 1 in this game.
Not good. No, I wouldn't advise that.
Who do you have that can match up with St. Brown and Jamison and Sam Laporta didn't even play, and Jahmyr Gibbs and every other weapon and everything? The Lions are out here messing around, running hook and ladders just in the middle of the field for the fun of it. I mean, I that's the one thing about this defense I don't understand at all, is why they lead the league in man coverage. I don't get it. They're 29th in the league
in man coverage grade. They were 29th in the league in man coverage grade last year, but they didn't run hardly any man coverage last year, which made sense. I just don't week in and week, unless you're right, unless it's just I have no idea how to run zone defense.
Right. It's hard to come up with a reason why they wouldn't do that.
I have no idea.
But it feels like just being super off in quarters would be better than what we saw yesterday.
I mean, that's honestly, even though they don't have a boatload of talent, they have obviously better safeties, but like that's mostly what the Chargers do. If nothing else, they don't give up home runs.
Did Ben Johnson? No, he wouldn't have interviewed for the Jacksonville job at any point over the last 2 years, right?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so,
no.
right?
Because Peterson's been there 3 years.
Yeah, they would have hired Peterson before. So my most impressive, hell of a job interview for Ben Johnson. Hell of a job interview. Because this one's going to become open, and you're going to have a franchise quarterback there in Trevor Lawrence, and ownership in Jacksonville is going to throw you the biggest bag possible that they can throw you. And that's what they're going to boast in this game. Look at these numbers, dude. I know we talked about how historic the game was. 60% on third down, 100% on fourth down, 100% in the red zone, 100% in goal-to-go situations. I mean, it cannot look better. It truly cannot look better. An unbelievable live job interview for Ben Johnson. And again, I think that we've all been a little bit annoyed, right? Because when offensive or defensive coordinators become hot head coaching candidates, we want them to take these jobs. We want to see what they're going to be like. You had your success in offensive coordinator, and I'm going to be honest, there are a lot of times it feels like when an offensive coordinator might have a really good year, and then something changes. Obviously, you lose some players in free agency, some guys retire, some guys get older, it trades. Maybe the draft class isn't exactly what you needed to be, whatever, and you just don't have that same success. There's no guarantee that you have that same exact success again. Ben Johnson now, this will be the third offseason in a row where he has been good enough to garner head coach interviews or even a job whatsoever. And the last 2 years, he has said no basically as a preferred head coaching candidate. And I think that people out there, myself maybe a little bit, I don't know if I'm like totally I don't have any animosity towards it, but it's like, man, I want to see you as a head coach. I think a lot of people look at him in the situation and go, are you sure you don't want to take a head coach job? Because a lot of these don't come around very often. You could be a head coach candidate now, but all it takes is one bad year for you as a coordinator, and all of a sudden the league might drop you like a rock. You might not get those head coach interviews again. So I think people have sort of talked about that with Ben Johnson. The bag could not be heavier for this guy. I mean, he's in a situation where he might have the Dallas Cowboys and the Jacksonville Jaguars basically saying, we're going to blank check.
Well, and
write down whatever number you want.
And the Raiders and the New York Jets and the New Orleans Saints.
Right.
Well,
right.
But here's the thing.
It's going to be like 5 teams with a blank check for him.
Here's what I'll say to that.
How do you one up a blank check?
I actually respect the hell out of his process.
Well, obviously it has worked out very well for him.
What has been floated around is that Ben Johnson is being selective, and he wants to make sure if he does it, he goes to the right situation. Because how many times have we seen guys become head coaches and they just take the first job that jumps at them,
100%,
and then it's still kind of a mess?
I don't mean to discredit that. I actually do have a lot of respect for him for saying we are building a Super Bowl contender.
Even this
like
past,
Walt is saying in the chat, and I agree with him. Like, go get a ring.
This
like,
past
you got a chance to win a ring.
He said that himself. He goes, I could win a Super Bowl ring first with the Lions.
Right.
That would be the greatest thing ever, wouldn't it?
And I think he wants to. And if the Lions win a Super Bowl this year, I think he's absolutely going to leave because that's his one ring, right? I guess he could stay and defend the title, but I think that would be him saying, okay, I've won a Super Bowl in this league. Now let me go do it as a head coach. Because again, I mean, if Ben Johnson takes a head coaching job in the NFL this year, he will be the highest paid coach in the NFL.
Yeah, probably.
You have 5 franchises that are basically so desperate on the offensive side of the football, they're going to pay you whatever you want, especially if they win a Super Bowl in Detroit this year with what they are doing. He will be the highest paid coach in the NFL, I think.
Yeah, I could see that.
So,
I forget what Jim Harbaugh is making, something crazy too. But
and I'm not saying that to say that like,
oh no, he'll
taking anything away from Jim Harbaugh.
He'll have earned it.
It's just capitalism. It's compounding capitalism.
It's going to be a bidding war. Every team is going. Who's your preferred? It's going to be Ben Johnson. Yeah, I mean, and I'll tell you what, they're going to have the same thing with Aaron Glenn too.
He might not make what Johnson makes. But
yeah, I mean,
his
Aaron
defense,
great year.
Yeah,
great year.
Absolutely. Real quick, just bouncing off that most impressive, Jared Goff, way to bounce back from 5 interceptions. I mean, this just a dominant performance. 412 yards, 4 touchdowns, 91.8 passing grade, and you talk about putting on a clinic of just where the football is supposed to go in your offense. Jared Goff might be adding a few dollars trying to keep Johnson as the OC because, I mean, these two guys together, it's just been incredible. He's got a mastery of this offense now in his 3rd year in it, and, I mean, you could not bounce back any better than that from the way he played last week than that, because everyone after the Houston game was, well, can they win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff? And then Goff went and just proved us all wrong again, and maybe he can just do it. Maybe they're just the best team in football.
92.6% adjusted completion percentage.
That's fair.
Couldn't do that in pregame warm-up.
Oh, no, I'd throw my arm out before I hit 92%. Absolutely.
Do you not get the reference?
No.
It's all right.
Well, I just
explain to you.
I live in a cave.
It's all right.
You know how it is.
It's all right. It's a movie. Don't worry about it.
Everyone in the chat knows it.
It's not a movie. Yeah, everybody in the chat probably does know it. So you will see it if you're looking at the chat at all. My most disappointing is just the Doug Peterson era. I was excited about this one, really was. And again, like I said at the top of the segment, clean house. It's time. I mean, you gotta be able to clean house in this one. The vibes are terrible in Jacksonville, and I don't know how they get better if you don't clean house. Really don't. Vikings-Titans, next game I want to touch on. 23-13, the Minnesota Vikings are victorious in this one. Top 5 graded Minnesota Viking players in this game. Linebacker Blake Cashman, top graded player with an 84.2. Defensive tackle Jonathan Bullard, a 76.2. Edge rusher Pat Jones, a second, 75.9. Edge rusher Andrew Van Ginkel, a 74.6. And offensive tackle Ryan O'Neal, a 74.5. Sam Darnold in this game, an elite 90.8. The other side of things for the Tennessee Titans, defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons on the top of the list at an 88.7. Wide receiver Calvin Ridley, a 79.6. People might be looking at it and be like, oh, that's a high number for Calvin Ridley, but he didn't really have a very productive day. I'll tell you why that's a high number, and that's correct for Calvin Ridley in a second. Edge rusher Sebastian Joseph Day with a 77.4. Offensive tackle J.C. Latham, a 73.0. And wide receiver Nick Westbrook-Akine with a 70.9. Will Levis in this one, 69.8. Not bad. Not terrible. I think Will's been getting better since he's been out in the lineup. So I've enjoyed watching Will Levis over the last couple of weeks. Can I just do my stat that told the story first? Because I want to hit on the Calvin Ridley one.
Absolutely.
To me, the stat that told the story, because this is a 10-point game, right? I think closer than people maybe thought it was going to be. I don't know, over the last couple of weeks, it's not like the Vikings have absolutely been demolishing teams, and Titans obviously played a little bit better last week. So I think people thought that this, Vikings soundly win, but 10-point game is pretty close. I mean, you got a shot there. You're within striking distance. To me, the stat that told the story is the Titans' penalties. And we talk about the refs every year. Refs are a factor for games, for sure. This year, going back to the very beginning of the season, the Chiefs-Ravens game, where the first, four out of the first 5 plays of the game were penalties on the Chiefs because the refs were like, you're not allowed to be in the backfield if you're an offensive tackle. You have to have the rule. The loose rule is, well, I don't know if it's loose. It might be word for word in the rule book. The head of the offensive tackle, when he is in his stance, has to be even with the hip or butt of the center. So the center is obviously truly on the line because he's holding the football. And then the tackle gets to be a little bit further back because obviously he's trying to, get a little bit of a head start against the pass rush that's right in front of him. But you are not allowed to be deeper. Your head, when you're in your stance, is not allowed to be deeper than the butt of where the center is if it's an even straight line from sideline to sideline. And if it is, you are considered in the backfield. If you're an offensive tackle, you are not on the line of scrimmage, and that is an illegal formation. There were 80 passing yards in this game, including a touchdown to Calvin Ridley that was taken off the board because Isaiah Prince got called for 3 illegal formation penalties for exactly this. And that's a difference maker in this game. Now, the Titans ended up scoring a field goal on the drive that would have been a touchdown, so it's not like it was a 7-point swing. It was a 4-point swing for them, but those things change things. I believe the other 2 plays that they had, one of them was a 20-plus yard pass to Nick Westbrook-Akine, and I can't remember how far the third one was, but to me, those are difference makers in this game. Those are the stats. This was a decently close football game, and you're taking a touchdown and 80 receiving yards off the board for illegal formation penalties because they're sort of changing how they're enforcing things. And J.C. Latham said after the game that before the game or at the beginning of the game, the ref did give him a warning. He's like, you got to be higher up. So he didn't say whether or not that also was the case for Prince, who was on the right tackle. He was at right tackle on that one. But very clearly, it was something that was continuing to be called, and three really killer penalties that I think actually told the story in this one.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing when you're teaching offense. So you have to get lined up right. I mean, I would think it wouldn't happen 3 times, right? And I know we've seen this from some other teams. I know Jawan Taylor is the guy who's famous for it, but I mean, 3 times is inexcusable because you never know what happens on those plays. Like you mentioned, that's 3 explosive pass plays that they lost on that, and it's just. Well, I mean, to me, it's kind of that those are the things that bad teams do. I mean, is that not why the Titans have only won 2 games this season?
No, unfortunately.
At least part of it. I mean, these are the little things that you have to have the details down on if you're going to win football games in the NFL. For me, stat that tells a story, I think one of the things that makes a good offense really good, and one of the things Kevin O'Connell's really good at is creating production on early downs, right? We talk about it all the time. That's what you want, right? 3rd and 4th down can be unstable. If your offense is good in early downs, then you got a good offense. Okay, 5.2 yards per play on 1st and 2nd down in this game. EPA per play right around 0, but that's heavily tilted because of the lost fumble in the first quarter. It was a drop pitch, a toss sweep kind of thing that Aaron Jones dropped, and it was a turnover. Without that fumble, which happened on the first drive of the game, actually a positive .133 EPA per play on early downs. Sam Darnold on early downs, 92.9 passing grade. Flip it to the other side. Titans on early downs, 3.6 yards per play, minus .261 EPA per play. There are multiple reasons this all happened, and we're going to go over a couple of them here. But the Vikings were just better, more productive on early downs. The Titans were behind the chains a lot. Even the 98-yard touchdown to Nick Westbrook-Akine was on 3rd down, and they just somebody on the back end for the Vikings just took a bad angle, and there it went for the 2nd longest play in Titans history. But I mean, that's what it is. Kevin O'Connell, early in series, right? 1st and 2nd down, and early in games. That's what he wants. He wants early leads. He wants everything done as quick as possible, get a lead, let Brian Flores work. Mm-hmm. That's where this game went. The Vikings won the game the way the Vikings do.
Most disappointing for me is the Titans' run game.
Yeah.
12 non-Levis carries in this game for 15 yards between Pollard and Spears.
That's why they didn't get anything done on 1st down.
It's got to be a lot better than that.
Yeah.
So that was most disappointing for me. Most impressive was actually the Vikings' run defense. You talked about, setting yourself up well on the scoreboard and then putting yourself in advantageous situations to let Brian Flores cook. 90.5 run defense grade as a team in this one. So obviously it sort of goes hand in hand. I was disappointed about the Titans' run game. I was most impressed by how the Vikings played them in run defense. So that's my little 1-2 there. Anything else on this one?
Disappointing. I'm just adding on Titans' offensive line. Just not making. J.C. Latham was good in this game. The other 4 were not. Just not making the progress that they need to be making. The 2nd lowest graded offensive line in football. And most impressive, Sam Darnold. I thought he was as in control of this game, I think, as any game this season. It just looked. We had a couple weeks here recently where it was like, he looked indecisive, the red zone stuff, like you mentioned.
Right.
He's kind of fooling around with the turnover where he plays a little bit. He was decisive. I thought he was confident getting to his 2nd read. He was confident on the move. Maybe it's because they're playing the Titans and it's a game they're favored in. They're better than the Titans. But I thought this was as calm and cool as Sam Darnold played in any game all season. If he keeps playing like that, they're obviously already 8-2, still in division contention. I mean, obviously we talk about the Lions and just assuming they're going to win the division. But, I mean, Minnesota's got 8 wins, and they're just about a shoo-in for the playoffs. And Darnold, I think there was parts of last week where it got better, but this week I think he really got back on the horse. I would argue this was his best game of the season.
Colts Jets. Anthony Richardson's back, baby. He's so back. Dalton hates to hear it. What a game from Anthony Richardson.
Good week for the Florida Gators, wasn't it?
It always is, brother. No, I'm just kidding. It's not. 28-27 is the score. Well, was the score from this one? Indianapolis gets the win. Top 5 graded Indianapolis Colts in this one. Cornerback Jalen Jones, an 83.7. Jalen's had a funny year. I feel like he's either like number 1 on this list or he's one of the lowest.
You already know
players.
why this happens.
With Jalen?
Yeah.
Why?
Because you ripped him for wearing number 40. This is still on you.
No, I already paid for that. What are you talking
You're
about?
still paying for it. Absolutely.
No, I already paid for that one. I'm just saying he's volatile as a corner. That's all I'm trying to say. He had a great game this past week. I'm giving him his kudos.
Now he's just like any other corner.
I just said he has a high ceiling. He's playing well. He's number 1 on this list, 83.7. Wide receiver Josh Allen's an 83.0. Edge rusher Kwity Paye, an 82.7. Edge rusher Latu with a 78.7. Then offensive tackle Braden Smith, a 74.1. Quarterback Anthony Richardson, an 80.1 in this game. On the Jets side of things, defensive tackle Quinnen Williams, he had an 83.8 overall grade in this one. Guard John Simpson, an 81.5. Defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw, an 81.4. Center Joe Tittman, a 73.9. Linebacker Quincy Williams, a 72.3. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers struggled in this one, a 48.4 overall grade here in this one. Jets now 3-8, currently in possession of the number 7 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. Just not a good football team right now, but had the ability to win this game, and honestly, it was Anthony Richardson who, that last drive was brilliant and won them the football game. But I'll start there. You know what? I'm just going to start there. Colts explosive plays. That was the stat that told the story for me, because I don't totally want to open up this box. Maybe I'm about to. I don't want to go back into the Joe Flacco decision, but when you made the choice to bench Anthony Richardson, there were a lot of reasons of what it could have been. Did Jim Irsay step in and was like, okay, we got to get Richardson out of there. He's not consistent enough. He's not winning us football games. We got to get Joe Flacco in. He's the veteran. He's won a Super Bowl before. He knows to do it. Was this an Irsay thing? Was it a players-led thing because Anthony Richardson tapped the helmet and took himself out? Did players lose respect for him at that point? Is that the reason why he was benched? You could talk about his play because he was certainly playing inconsistent. I want to make sure that we're truthful about that. He was not playing as efficient as he needed to be or could have been, but giving up on him I think would have been a little silly. So he sits the bench for a couple of games, and it's very clear, and I thought this was very silly for people who were caping for Joe Flacco to be the one to start. It was like, oh, okay, well, this team makes the playoffs with Joe Flacco. And then we had 2 games where Joe Flacco very clearly was not a playoff caliber quarterback. It just was not this guarantee that I think a lot of people were just saying oh, if you put in Joe Flacco, could the offense be a little bit more on schedule? Yes, was never going to deny that. But to think that, if you are one Joe Flacco move away from making the playoffs, I thought was kind of silly. And when Joe Flacco became the starter, there was not enough explosive plays in the offense, in my opinion. Anthony Richardson gets back out there. Boom, explosive plays are back. Last 2 weeks before, when Joe Flacco was starting, 5 explosive plays, 6 explosive plays. This past week with Anthony Richardson, 9. It's a major difference maker. When you have 3 and 4 more explosive plays of 20 yards or more, you have a better chance to win the football game. Average depth of target was either a yard or 2 yards higher this week than what it was over the last 2 weeks with Joe Flacco. It was so much more of a dynamic and explosive offense with Anthony Richardson. And to me, that's the stat that told the story, because they don't win this game without Anthony Richardson. They don't win this game with Joe Flacco. It would have been more of a, wow, okay, it would have been a little bit back and forth, a little less volatile for the Colts, maybe, but they would not have had the juice to win the football game. And that has been my thing about Richardson the whole time, especially when it comes to him versus Flacco. I think a lot of people got frustrated. Okay, Anthony Richardson versus maybe what he could be or should be is a different conversation than him versus Flacco. The him versus Flacco, to me, did not make a lot of sense, and I think the numbers this past week, especially with the offense going well, showcased that. But even in the games where the Colts have lost, even in the frustrating, inconsistent, inefficient Anthony Richardson games, the big-time throws, the explosive plays, it's still there. That gives you a chance to win the game. And I think you need that, and I think that was his stat that told the story here in this game.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's what I'll say. I don't know that Flacco wouldn't have beat the Jets.
Get out of here.
There is no...
Flacco's not making that last drive. He's not making that last drive like Richardson did.
Against a Jets team covering like this, he might have. Richardson. Let me start with Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first time all year that I saw him throw the football on time. That's really what it came down to for me. He threw it on time, and he wasn't looking for bombs every single play. Now, let me flip this over, because, I personally, maybe I'm a little biased, sort of, in a weird way, I do think Joe Flacco would have beat the Jets. I think anybody would beat the Jets right now. That's just me.
I don't agree with you.
Here we go. We've talked about this defense. Run defense falling apart. We've seen that since week 1.
Jets, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tackling.
Bad.
Major issue.
Big issue.
But the one silver lining was that they could cover, and they didn't give up big plays like that. And I know Richardson creates them. I get it. I heard you. I know. First 5 weeks of the season, Jets led the league in coverage grade. Last 6 weeks, they're 28th. In this game, they had Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed and Michael Carter all healthy.
Yeah, not good.
They're not even covering now. So this defense, it's
a unmotivated football team.
And it's a very
unmotivated, unfocused,
I think on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
This is here's what I'll say with Richardson. I mentioned this to you before the show. My favorite thing as a coach when a player would do something right was they would come to me, man, coach, that was great, wasn't it? I go, yeah, do it again. Okay, cool. If he does it against Detroit next week, tough task. I know. I'm not going to totally judge him off a game against the Lions after a game against the Jets. Let's stack weeks now, right? Richardson, we've seen him do it.
I'm not against you.
Absolutely. And we've seen him do it against the Jets, which is a baby step, admittedly, because this Jets defense is just the whole Jets team is a train wreck. That's just where we're at now. And now the one thing they were still good at, we thought, now they're not even good at that now. So that's where we're at. Credit to him, it works both ways. One guy performs well, the other side doesn't. I'm throwing most impressive in here too because I absolutely love this guy. I've talked about him probably 3 or 4 times already in the last 6 weeks. Josh Downs is a star. That's where I'm at with 100%. This. 5 catches, 84 yards and a touchdown, 84 receiving grade. For the season now, an 87 receiving grade. That's 6 among wide receivers. He's one of the best slot receivers in the league, and all he does is get first downs.
Him and Jack Smith-Njigba right now, I feel like are on another level.
You know what I like too? Since week 4, okay, came back in week 3, struggled for a game, was working back into it. Since week 4, just again, if they don't already have the nickname, his nickname now is Josh First Downs. He's got 30 first downs since week 4. That's 5th in the NFL. His emergence, I think, has changed this offense, and Richardson looking in his direction because he gets open. He's just one of these guys that gets open. That's all he does, and I know I've mentioned it at least 3 times already on this show in previous weeks. This is a star now. And we thought coming into the year, okay, Michael Pittman's obviously their best receiver. He was obviously their best receiver last year, but Josh Downs is a difference maker, and he's the guy that they need to keep going to keep moving the chains. And Richardson needs to keep relying on to keep moving the chains because that was always my biggest complaint with Richardson. You're not accurate enough, you don't just move the chains. That's all I need you to do. The explosives are fantastic, but before we were getting explosives without first downs. If you get both on a consistent basis, you have something. But I think keep looking for Josh Downs because, boy, this stretches of games it feels like he's always open.
I think people feel better about when Joe Flacco just kind of methodically moves the ball down the field, but then you would get games where he does not push it the way that you need to win.
In Flacco's defense, he was stuck playing the Vikings and the Bills.
No, and those are two good defenses. I understand. I understand. But you just said the Jets, if they've been able to do anything this season, it has been cover, right?
Not anymore.
Right, but not this game, right?
Not the last 6.
I think that Richardson's a reason why.
He's a reason, sure. Well, I think to say Flacco wouldn't have won this, I think either one of them would have beat the Jets. Oh, absolutely, either one of them would. And I think either one of them would have lost to the Vikings and the Bills. Those are better teams than the Colts.
I would agree with you on the last 2 games. I think Richardson won this game. I think he played really well. 80.3 passing grade, 88.5 adjusted completion percentage. That was the best mark that he has had in his career.
That's where I'm at.
Okay.
Stack him.
I'm not trying to say that you can't. I love the coach speak. I love the phrase. Great job. Do it again. I love that with Anthony Richardson. I think that's a great way to I think sort of encapsulate sort of what this game was for him. But there were a couple of times, I will say, where the touch passes failed him and he missed some accuracy on even some smaller passes. But there was one pass, oh man, I can't remember when this was in the game. It was like a deep crosser, it was a deep over to Michael Pittman Jr. It was on 1st and 10. I can't remember which quarter it was. And Richardson hikes the ball and he gets a little bit of pressure in his face, and it's linebackers are flowing one way, and he has to fit it in between the linebacker and the safety at just a pinpoint, beautiful ball placement. And he not only does so, he does so with a guy winning quickly in his face, and he doesn't even get to complete his drop. He just puts his weight on his back foot, and he flicks the football immediately, and it just went right to Michael Pittman Jr.'s hands. And it's plays like that where I go, Flacco can't do that anymore. Like, Flacco can't complete, like, those passes. Now, can Flacco give you the touch passes? Again, like, sure, maybe a little bit better than Richardson, but that's the stuff he can't do. He doesn't have the arm to do that anymore. Richardson does. Richardson's got the talent to be able to get you out of trouble. Now we need to see him get himself out of trouble more regularly, or maybe, better way to put it, put himself in trouble less. Great week. Do it again. Your most disappointing before we move on.
It's actually the other quarterback in this game. I think I know there's been talk about him coming back next year, and considering the way the team is now, I'm not sure why. Well, there's a lot of cash involved too, but we might be getting to the end of the rope here with Aaron Rodgers. And it's funny because...
Did you see his quote after the game?
What did he say?
Where he was like, oh, because they're going in the bye week. And he's like, bye week's coming at a good time. We get to rest.
Oh.
And he was like, we get to sit back and think about why we fell in love with this game. And it's like, oh, buddy. You're down bad when you start having, like, graduation goggles in week 11.
Another darkness retreat.
No, we're not doing another darkness retreat, but, like, going back to talking about being unmotivated, undisciplined, and just not really having a reason to play. Very clearly, if he's saying that out loud to the media of, and I don't know if he was saying a general we or if it was more of a him, because obviously he could retire after this year, but saying we've got to figure out and remember, like, why we fell in love with this game is like, damn, vibes are bad. Vibes are real bad.
He definitely looked better at the beginning of the season, and he's taken a lot of hits this year. But, and it's funny because the traditional stats in this game would tell you he went like 22 of 28, and I think threw 2 touchdowns, and they had a late lead and all of that. But a 50 passing grade, 2 for 5 on throws, 10-plus yards down the field. His average depth of target was 4.4 yards in this game. This offense is slants and checkdowns. There's no vertical. Even with Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, now it's just he can't work the ball down the field now. He's now on 10-plus yard throws. He's in the bottom like 5 or 6 in accuracy on 10-plus yard throws. It's just there's no vertical threat even with the 2 receivers. And I think it's just a matter of he's been hesitant to throw the football downfield anyway, but now it's really scattershot. And I think there's going to be a lot of discussions about the Jets getting a quarterback in this next draft, which is not new because they're the Jets. But
I don't think a lot of people who are doing that.
Not preseason, we weren't doing it.
Yeah, no.
Now you have to really think about it. Even if he does for some reason come back next year, you have to have a plan.
Yeah, I am very closely getting towards, and it's it's not as guaranteed of a quarterback season this draft than it was, like last season with so many different quarterback options. And so I don't want to say it's quarterback no matter what for the Jets, but you're basically in a situation where if Aaron Rodgers comes back at all, he's coming back for 1 year. Like he's not gonna play beyond next year.
I don't even know that it would be the full year.
I think it would be to your advantage to draft a quarterback in the first round if you found the one that you liked, that you're okay with. And that I think that all depends on who the head coach is going to be. What kind of offense you're going to run, what kind of connection could you have with the quarterback, all that kind of stuff. So it's just something worth noting.
Head coach and quarterback?
Are you Deion? Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I know everyone's talking about us now. I'm just pipe dream.
And every single head coach opening, we're just going to go, Deion?
Just like that.
Deion?
If nothing else, it'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Rams at Patriots. Rams win this game 28-22. Take a look at the top 5 graded players for the Los Angeles Rams in this game. Puka Nacua at the top of the list with a 92.6. Safety Cam Kinchins has had a couple of really good games this season. 92.6. Guard Kevin Dotson at 85.6. Offensive tackle Alaric Jackson at 81.9. Center Bo Limmer, 77.9. Matthew Stafford in this one, a 79.9. On New England side of things, Christian Gonzalez with a 78.5 at the very top. Wide receiver Kendrick Bourne, a 77.5. Tight end Hunter Henry, a 72.8. Edge rusher Keon White with a 71.9. Wide receiver Pop Douglas with a 70.1. And then Drake May with a 79.4 in this game. So good little quarterback battle here. Very similar quarterback grades. Stat told the story. What do you got?
This, I think it was
Lions-Titans earlier in the season. When I was watching this reminded me of, I think it was that game when the Lions just got absolutely blazing, unstoppably hot in the middle of a game. That's pretty much what happened here, because early in the game, New England looked pretty good. Late in the game, in the fourth quarter, when they were coming back, New England looked pretty good until Drake made the last interception, and a game ender. It is what it is. He's a rookie. But there were 5 drives in the middle of this game spanning the second and third quarter from the Rams. Boy, when they get hot, don't they? 4 touchdowns and a Josh Carty missed 26-yard field goal when if there was more time, they would have gone for the touchdown. And it was a weird day for kickers, wasn't it?
Extremely weird.
Justin Tucker, Josh Carty.
Kickers, outside of Boswell, kickers were terrible.
He might hit every field goal yesterday.
I mean, Evan McPherson's good.
Yeah.
And he just completely whiffed on 2 field goals.
We'll get to Dustin Hopkins. I mean,
holy cow. Yeah.
On a day, I mean, Josh Carty missing a 26-yard. But either way, 5 really productive drives. 4 of them scored touchdowns. 95.5 offense grade as a team on those drives. They ran 29 plays and got 296 yards in 5 drives. That's crazy. I mean, when you look at, when they talk about, well, the Rams can contend for a division title and contend for a playoff spot, this is why. Because when they get rolling, and I've mentioned to you, I've mentioned it every week, I will do it again, I'll probably do it every week. When Matt Stafford's protected, and once again he was protected this week, this is a dangerous offense. And that's not the only reason, obviously, they're dangerous, but he got blazing hot in the middle of this game. He was protected. The Patriots, I mean, more power to them for actually making this a 1-score game again towards the end, because they just survived an onslaught in the middle of this game. And Matt Stafford, there are times, man, when this offense, when they get rolling, they can play with anybody. And I know this, again, this is New England, but this was a big game for the Rams. This is a game they could have gone all the way out east and lost, and their season would have been just about over when it comes to playoff hopes. They needed this game, and Stafford and the offense came through, especially in the middle of it. Yeah,
it's the explosive plays as well, which I'll sort of piggyback off of. Nakua, 92.5 receiving grade, 3 explosive plays. Cooper Kupp, 77.0 receiving grade, 2 explosive plays. Those 2 alone accounted for 88.5% of the wide receiver usage stat that we have, which we call threat. It's basically they're the offense. I mean, we talk about the Bengals and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and them. It's like, they lean so much on those 2 wide receivers. Nobody leans on 2 wide receivers more than the Los Angeles Rams do, and it works. It continues to work for them. Those are the 2 receivers where they're very comfortable getting those guys in spots where they can create the explosive plays because they depend on them a ton. So the biggest plays in the games goes to their stars, and it's just a very comfortable, confident relationship that I think Sean McVay, as a play designer and play caller, has with Matthew Stafford, where no matter what the situation is, they're very comfortable going to one of those 2 guys, putting one of the most talented wide receivers in position to get the football when they need it most. Sometimes the game is simple like that, right? Get your best player the football. And I think the Rams do that at a very, very high level. So that's very impressive to me. Another most impressive, I saw somebody in the chat saying that Braden Fisk had 2 sacks in this game. Passers win percentage was still below 10%, so just as a whole, okay, he could be winning a little bit more regularly. But this year, I think Fisk has had some of those big plays, the sacks. He's been getting into the backfield. And for a rookie season for him, I think this is really nice to see, especially because it was a little bit of a slow start for him, I think, through the first, 3-4 weeks of the season. And now he feels a little bit more comfortable. I think next year and the year after, Kobe Turner also graded really well in this game. So just the young defensive line for the Los Angeles Rams, in my opinion, is giving them so much hope moving forward, not only moving forward for the rest of the season, but going into next year and beyond. You draft Jared Verse. He looks like he's going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Fisk is playing well. He's making some impact plays. Kobe Turner's playing well. Bobby Brown's been great as a run defender for them. He's an upcoming free agent, so maybe he's not on the team next year, but Byron Young as well on the other edge spot. He is playing well for them. So I just continue to be really, really encouraged by how that defensive line is playing. And then the other side of things, most disappointing for me, Patriots defensive line. This felt like it should have been an opportunity for them to capitalize off a really good week they had last week against the Chicago Bears. 8 sacks and 21 pressures last week was this New England defensive line against the Chicago Bears offensive line. This week, 0 sacks, only 7 total pressures, and a very low pressure percentage for this team. I think it was like 8.3%, which as a team is very, very low. And it was an offensive line with the Rams where Jonah Jackson, Steve Avila, Joe Noteboom, they really struggled last week as a group. I felt like the Rams did. So it should have been an opportunity for them to capitalize a little bit more. Every week's a little bit different in the NFL, but that was still disappointing for me. So what about you?
I'm going to expand on what you were saying with Fisk and Verse. And actually, I already did it once today. I love when I get to work a mini theme into the show. I did it once today with the other set of rookies in LA with the Chargers. This Rams rookie class has quietly been one of the best ones in the league.
When he doesn't trade away his draft picks, he's pretty good at this thing.
Yeah, he drafts when he wants to, and he wanted to draft this year. And look at all of these guys. And Omar Spates, actually, linebacker, went undrafted, and he found him, and he was great in the preseason. Took him some time to get some playing time now, but he's played a heavy amount in the last couple of games. He's been really good. 74 for him. Jared Verse with 4 pressures. Braden Fisk, one of those 2 sacks, I would argue the biggest play in the game that really got the Rams momentum. They scored a touchdown. 2 plays later, Fisk gets a forced fumble on a sack of Drake May. Rams get the ball, score another touchdown next play. Bo Limmer at center. Look, it's been some tough going for him. He was a day 3 pick. He wasn't supposed to be the starting center for most of the year, as he's been so far. He's getting better. Cam Kinchens with a game-winning interception. He was the highest-graded player in this game. They are getting contributions up and down from their rookie class, and you could argue it is saving their season. Not only, we've talked a lot about Jared Verse being a potential superstar. I mean, he's already one of the best pass rushers in football. They're getting it from their entire draft class right now, and it's a big reason, just like the other team in LA, that they've seen this resurgence from what really could have been a lost season for this team, the way it looked early in the year, especially in pass protection. They couldn't protect Stafford, and everything was going wrong. Now they got the receivers healthy. The rookies are contributing. Again, the secondary could be a little bit better. Big play from Kinchens at the end to seal the game. But this rookie class, you mentioned it, they have a really nice young core to work with, not just on the D-line, but all over the place.
Yeah, Patriots draft also not looking so great, right? Jalen Polk, 2 offensive linemen. I mean, Drake May obviously is great, but somebody in the chat was just saying, like, man, the Patriots could have been a team that
Well, Drake May is far and away their best player right
could have gotten a lot more.
Javon Baker doesn't even play.
Right,
I mean,
right. It's tough.
Look, we knew they'd be picking towards the top of this next draft anyway. So
we did. But you would have liked to see a little bit
Yeah.
more from that rookie class, no doubt about it.
At least we are pretty sure you have the quarterback.
Yes,
Pretty sure of it.
Yes, Drake May's great. I think that Drake May is very good. All right, let's move on to the next game. Raiders-Dolphins. Miami wins this one 34-19. Top 5 graded Miami Dolphin players in this game. Speaking of rookies, edge rusher Chop Robinson at the top of this list, and 86.4, stepping up for an edge rush group that really needed a presence there for them. Offensive tackle Teron Armstead an 84.0. Number 3, Tyreek Hill, a 76.6. Running back Devon Achane with a 75.7, and then linebacker Anthony Walker Jr. rounding things out with a 75.3. Tua Tagovailoa in this game is 66.0. On the other side of things, Las Vegas Raiders' top-graded player was linebacker Robert Spillane with an 81.5. Tight end Brock Bowers, unbelievable season. I'll get to him in a second. An 80.7. Offensive tackle Colton Miller an 80.0. Edge rusher Charles Snowden a 76.4, and then defensive tackle John Jenkins a 72.3. Gardner Minshew in this game a 65.5 overall grade. Dalton, what do we got?
All right, let's just talk about the Dolphins in kind of a broad scheme here real quick.
Okay.
Tua just existing in this offense makes it way.
I agree.
Way,
we have the same. Talking point.
Way better.
Yep,
right, and
yep.
he's not the best quarterback in football. He's not Tua or Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, I should say, or Lamar Jackson. We know what Tua can and can't do. And there's times he gets hot and he's really good. And that, his 64.9 passing grade dragged down a bit by a fumble he had early in the game. Like the rest of the game, it was in the low to mid 70s. Like he was solid, right? And generally that's what he is. And in this offense, that's all you need with the play calling from Mike McDaniel, with the after the catch, with the way they create in the run game. The 4 starts now that Tua's had since he's come back from the concussion. They're second in EPA per play, the second in successful play rate. They've scored on 60% of their drives. That's best in the NFL. This is still a really dangerous offense as long as Tua stays healthy. That's just the facts. Would they have to almost run the table to get to the playoffs at this point? Sure. But I believe they have to play the Jets, I think, twice, and they play the Browns, and they have a New England game. There are winnable games in their schedule down the stretch here where you go, okay, maybe if they were to get, just like we talk about with the Bengals, if they got raging hot and their offense does what we know that what they can do, maybe they have an outside chance at this thing. But it all happens just literally just because Tua came back. 288, 3 touchdowns. Again, passing grade, decent, not spectacular. He's he's not Joe Burrow or Josh Allen, but in this offense that is suited to his skills, they're way better. They can still be really efficient, and it's still the Dolphins' offense that we know. They have other issues. I think if they're going to get held back from here in, it's their defense. It might be their offensive line, but if Tua's in there, they're a threat to almost anybody.
No, I agree. It's just it's so much easier to have faith in this team with Tua there, and everything is so much better with Tua in the lineup. It sounds like it's just an absolute duh, but it is. Without him in there, they were one of the worst offenses in the NFL, the least explosive offenses in the NFL, and over the last couple of weeks, even though it hasn't been like a clean sweep in terms of overall wins, this has been a team that's looked competent and has really looked playing well. And you almost wish that you could just hit reset for this Dolphins team and almost just say, like, can we just play the season over actually and see what happened there, just because the injuries that they've had to deal with, and obviously Tua being one of them. So I agree with you. The stat that told the story is simply the fact that Tua is out there. And now when they are, Miami can beat the lower tiered teams in the NFL, because before that wasn't the case. With him not in the lineup, they were one of the lower tier teams in the NFL.
They shouldn't even beat New England without him.
Right. And so now you're at a spot where they're kind of like a middling team now at this point, as they are getting a lot more healthy and they're sort of figuring things out. So they're not quite the offense they were last year, but I agree. Tua being there is absolutely the stat that told the story. Most impressive to me is Brock Bowers, and it's really just a Brock Bowers sort of appreciation, a hat tip, a nod, whatever you want to call it. 16 targets in this game. 16.
Good player.
What are the Raiders without him? What are the Las Vegas Raiders without Brock Bowers? You talk about like guys who have been able to come in as rookies and change things. Genuine question. He
is a top at least 4 or 5 tight end in football right now.
Not on this football team. This is the worst offense in the league. Like, this is probably worse than Carolina without Brock Bowers. They're force-feeding a rookie tight end because they don't have other options. They have a terrible run game. I think the run game is my most disappointing in this one. 10 carries for 28 yards for Zamir White and Alexander Madison. That's never going to get it done for you. Wide receivers, not able to get it done outside of Brock Bowers if you consider him a wide receiver. Anyways, 16 targets, 13 receptions, 126 yards and a touchdown for Bowers. He's first in receptions, he's first in yards, and he's first in yards after catch for tight ends this season.
I think he might be leading in receptions for all players. I think a couple weeks ago he was. He might be leading all wide receivers in catches too. I mean, we think there was a few weeks ago we assumed the rookie of the year was Jaden Daniels, and it may still be. A couple other guys coming in hot, and I'll tell you what, the year that Brock Bowers is having might get him a higher number of votes than you might think. I know the quarterback thing is always biased towards that, but he's a top 5 tight end right now already.
Yes.
Like without question.
I do think it's very funny, the conversations that we had before the draft. I think I've said this on the show before, where we said, well, you have to kind of like justify his production of how you would draft him, because if you would draft him in the top 5 of the NFL draft, he basically has to play like a top 5 quarterback or top 5 tight end in the league, or it's not worth it, because of the way that tight end contracts are set up and guaranteed money and all that kind of stuff.
But if it hits,
and very clearly, he went. What did he get picked? 11th? Was he 11th? 13th? I think I always think it's 11, but it's actually 13.
No, I think it's 13.
He gets picked there, and now it's just a steal. It's an absolute steal if you take it a tight end in the top 15. So he was unbelievable. My most disappointing was the Raiders' run game, but yeah, anything else you got?
I'm going to stay on just a couple more numbers on how bad this Raiders' run game has been. We've talked about it a lot. So their running backs have a 50.1 rushing grade through Week 11. That's the worst by any team since 2016. And they are currently tracking. PFF's been a thing since 2006. They are tracking to have the worst EPA per rush in PFF history. That's where we're at.
Where is this team without Brock Bowers?
Nowhere.
This is the worst offense in the NFL if you replace him. If you replace Brock Bowers even with like a good tight end. Like a good one.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Not I'm not talking like a top 10 tight end, but if you replace, because I don't want, it's unfair to be like, okay, well, if he's not on the team, I get Michael Mayer, right? If Michael Mayer is fully healthy.
Yeah, no.
This is the worst offense in the NFL.
Yeah.
Worst offense in the NFL without Brock Bowers.
And just to shout out a tight end on the other side who's playing really well lately. I really liked the Jonnu Smith signing for the Dolphins, just considering the after the catch ability, and he's playing really well lately. He's another reason this offense has gotten hot. 6 catches for 101 yards in this game and 2 touchdowns. And since week 5, tight end receiving grade, okay? George Kittle, Brock Bowers, Jonnu Smith. Added a dimension, and the tight ends for the Dolphins last year were among the least productive in football. They found a groove with using Jonnu Smith, especially in a lot of their motion stuff. He's added a different dimension, I think especially a horizontal dimension to their passing game that's working really well. He's been really productive for them lately.
All right, before we get to the next game, I got to talk about what's on your head today, and that is my favorite hats that I've ever had. Melon. They're fantastic. MELIN. To me, these are the staple pieces of an outfit, man.
I need a black one like that.
You do. We need to get you one.
Yeah.
We honestly do, because the white one looks good. It looks good on the outfit because you got the black sweatshirt. Now you got the white hat. Your contrasted colors a little bit. It looks good. It brings it all together. A good hat brings every single outfit together. Whether it's you going to work, whether it's you're working out, whether you're going out for drinks with your friends, or whatever it is, whatever occasion. Melon's got you with all different types of styles and hats that are durable, comfortable for every single situation. We were just talking before the show, and you're like, man, they're structured so well. You could tell it's such a well-built hat, and it is. Whether it's a golf course, or you're going for a run, or you're playing pickleball, or like whatever, man. I'm serious. These are the most versatile, comfortable, durable hats that I've ever bought. I think they're my new favorite hat, without a doubt. No sweat stains, no smell. They look the same the day that you took it out of the box. It's just a hat that you're going to get a ton of compliments on every time that you wear it. Go check them out. MELIN. They've got a lot of different types of hats, type of products. They've got beanies as well. They've got like flannel hats too to keep you warm during the winter. I know we got the winter months coming up. They're built to last as well. So these are high quality things that you'll be able to see when you go to their website, MELIN.com. You can get them wet as well. They're super durable in that way, comfortable. The sizing's great. Check it out. If you're looking for the world's most durable, comfortable hat, look no further. Go to MELIN.com and put these hats to test yourself. I guarantee that you're going to like it.
You know what? Great branding too, Trevor. I just thought of this now while you were doing that.
Yeah.
You know why it's great branding?
Because
they go on your melon. You think that's why they named it that?
I'm pretty sure I just heard one of our producers just go, "Oh my gosh!" But you're right.
I was just sitting here thinking. Sometimes
why are they booing you? You're right.
When you're doing the ad read, sometimes I just sit here and think about things because I don't have much else to do during that time.
you're
right?
deep in
I
thought.
forgot to pour myself a water. Sometimes I just think about things. I go, wow, I just thought of it now.
Picture yourself in a lot of different life situations, important life situations, and in all of them, you're wearing a melon hat.
That just great marketing team they have there coming up with that name.
It's true.
Now that I thought about it.
It's true.
I got one. It feels good.
I know. Yeah. You're rocking the hat very well. You also have a melon, which I think is good.
I sure do.
Melon on the melon. All right, we're moving on. That's too far. Brown Saints. Voodoo Magic. Taysom Hill is just good for one of these every single year. Every single year he's good for one of them. And unfortunately, the Browns ran into the buzzsaw that is the elite Taysom Hill game. New Orleans wins this game 35-14. So first 2 weeks of the season, Saints looked like one of the best teams in the NFL. And then what was it? 6-7 weeks? One of the worst teams in the NFL.
Mojo wears off a little.
And now, last 2 weeks, could be back, baby. They got McCoy back. Trevor Penning's playing well. The offensive line's playing well again. You don't have Chris Olave. You don't have Rashid Shaheed. Feels like no problem over here. This team's playing well despite all the injuries over the last couple of weeks.
NFC South is still kind of open.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is.
It always is.
Yeah, no, it always comes down to the wire. This division does. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded players. Linebacker Demario Davis, a 91.2 overall grade. Tight end Foster Moreau with an 85.9. Tight end Juwan Johnson with an 84.8. And then tight end Taysom Hill with an 80.5. No wide receivers. Like I said, Shaheed's down. Chris Olave's not in the lineup. No problem. Just feed the tight end. Tight end passing game, baby. It's what Derek Carr's all about.
Too.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I guess I didn't even. That's just. You know what? My premise to this was my setup to this was disrespectful to MVS in the last 2 weeks that he has had. Safety Jordan Howden at number 5 on this list with an 80.1. Derek Carr in this game an 84.7. On Cleveland side of things, Denzel Ward had an elite 92.0 grade in this one. Edge rusher Myles Garrett with an 82.5. Edge rusher Isaiah McGuire with a 79.5. Defensive tackle Shelby Harris a 73.9. Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy a 72.1. Jameis Winston in this game a 68.3. Stat that told the story, Dalton. What do we got?
Well, in part because of Taysom Hill, like you mentioned, who is he's a tight end on paper, but he's just kind of football player. But Saints explosive plays been a theme for us all year. They want to run the ball. They want to throw deep balls, okay? I think that the explosive runs is really a big X factor. And them not finding, he's been doing it for years. You believe Taysom Hill's 34 years old, by the way? Running the ball like that?
I only believe that because people remind me of it all the time. I would not have had people not.
Well, you should have warned me before the show not to remind you.
Sorry,
I didn't know you had already been reminded by the entire public.
I was too busy complimenting your hat.
Well, I know you have a big audience, so you got to remind me of these things.
They're all bots.
Anyway, true. Saints 4 wins, 18 explosive runs in those games. 7 losses, 16 explosive runs total. They want to run the ball because it's Clint Kubiak and it comes from Mike Shanahan and the whole tree all the way down. And they want to throw the ball down the field, which now that they found Marquez Valdez-Scantling, they can do that too. They have someone to take the top off because Rashid Shaheed's done for the year and all that stuff. There's a clear formula here with the Saints, and this is what it looks like now. The added dimension of Taysom Hill, which they should have known about this. I think there's I forget what the record is, but there's some crazy stat since Taysom Hill's been on the Saints about when he gets like 10 touches or something, that their record is like disgustingly good. I couldn't find the number in time for the show. I don't know maybe a Saints fan in the chat can find that too, because when Taysom Hill gets at least 10 touches, they're like almost undefeated over the last like 4 or 5 years. He's actually not just a gimmick thing. He's a really big factor for their offense when they use him right. Love when they use him down on the goal line. I think it's a great thing to put in. And they just, it's the one time they really get away from the zone running game is when they put him in the cat and they have all those tight ends and they run power and they just say, go ahead. And like you said, also, is there any player in football who's more fun than Taysom Hill? Honestly.
When he goes off,
I know we have fun ones. We have Mahomes and Allen in the big games.
I think it's very frustrating for teams that are playing on the other side of it when he goes off.
Well, it's so much to prepare for.
Yeah.
He plays every position.
He gets a bad rap because of the year that Sean Payton was like, all right, screw you. I'll put him at quarterback. I'll do it.
He wasn't that bad.
Well, he wasn't good at passing.
Sure.
Come on, let's be honest.
No, but you running off then at that point as a backup.
He was what Vanderbilt's doing with Diego Pavia.
Honestly, I might have earlier this year. If it was me and knowing I had that guy, I probably would have phave him over Rattler. And I know they just drafted Rattler and they want to believe.
Yeah, we're never going to do that. But I hear what you're saying.
They weren't gonna, but
yeah.
That's where I would go. I would have gone with that. Just run the football like crazy with him then. But either way, just a great player that I think sometimes gets passed off as a gimmick, and there's so few players that can do what he does, on top of playing special teams and return and kick. They have a 34-year-old kick returner who used to play quarterback and does all the other things he does on offense. I mean, he's just a great football player.
7 carries, 138 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, 10 targets, 8 catches, 50 receiving yards.
And an interception. To your point about the passing, he did throw an interception in this game, which is tough. But you know what? He fights through it. He keeps doing the million jobs.
The Saints' offense is so balanced yesterday. Yeah. Well, the offensive line, so you get McCoy back in the lineup. Trevor Penning is playing better. Like I mentioned, the offensive line just in general is playing better for the Saints. They're back healthy because I think that it's worth noting they were healthy in weeks 1 and weeks 2 when we called them one of the better teams in the NFL. Then they've gone through a lot of injuries along the offensive line. Fuanga's been out. McCoy has been out. Now those guys are back in there, so it's looking better, obviously. I think that's certainly something that is of note. But 259 passing yards in this game, 214 yards rushing. Normally, balance doesn't weigh out like that. Normally, balance in the NFL, a healthy yet explosive offense is probably something a little bit closer to like 250, 275 yards passing, and then, I don't know.
$130.
I was going to say like anywhere from 125 to 175 rushing. And that's balanced. I think when people think of balance, they think it has to be 50-50. That's not really how it's supposed to work. Passing the ball is more advantageous, explosive, and you score more points when you pass the football. And it doesn't mean running's not important and also a pivotal part to the game, but like balance, average completion is just it's always going to be double what an average carry is going to be. So you obviously want your passing yards to be a lot higher. If your passing yards and your rushing yards are even, like if it's 200 and 200, sure, you're running the ball really great, but when you play some of the better passing offenses in the NFL, are you going to be able to keep up? I think that's an issue that you have. So anyways, all of that to say, the Saints offense is pretty dang balanced, especially the way that they played yesterday. And Taysom Hill is a massive reason why he was able to get going, and it was a lot of fun to watch him. He has like an elite game every single year. One or two, at least one, just sometimes two.
The Taysom Hill game.
It is every single year we get the Taysom Hill game, and this was the Taysom Hill game. And anytime you line up against the New Orleans Saints, you just pray that you're not that team, because it's so hard to beat this team. You're right. I don't know what the record is when Taysom Hill goes off like this, but it's got to be a good record.
There is some record when he has at least 10 touches. I'll have to dig through and find it later. But when he gets at least 10 touches, they win. Like almost every game. They just find ways to get him involved, and it's all sorts of nonsense from there.
Most disappointing or most impressive? Go ahead.
Impressive. I'll go on the other side. A guy I've been kind of worried about a little bit lately, but he had a great game. Demario Davis at linebacker, 13 tackles, couple of pass breakups, 91.2 overall grade. I thought one of the bigger plays in this game was right before the half. He had a pass breakup on Jameis in the end zone that then led to the Browns attempting a field goal, and Dustin Hopkins missed from 27 or 29, wherever they kicked it from, real short. Again, weird day for kickers, but turned into a play that saved them 7, and then eventually missing a field goal. I mean, that was a big play before the half. And then just most disappointing, I guess, is just this game was actually tied going into the fourth quarter, and the Saints just teed off on the Browns in the next 15 minutes, especially on the ground. 138 rushing yards in the fourth quarter alone. And the Browns had a 29 run defense grade in that quarter. It just, whatever happened there with their defense just kind of came apart, because they played pretty darn well for 3 quarters, and then it all fell apart on them.
Yeah, Browns defense to me, and just on the season overall, really, the Browns defense, I think if we could just kind of take a step back there, 24.8 points per game allowed. That's 24th in the NFL. 48.4 coverage grade this season. They're 21st in EPA per play allowed. That was supposed to be the bread and butter of this team, right? I felt like the identity was, all right, they're going to play really good defense. They got a good offensive line, and then we'll kind of see what we have with Deshaun Watson. Well, the offensive line's not been good this year, and the defense has not been up to their caliber over the last 2 to 3 seasons, and that was just always going to be a recipe for disaster this season for the Cleveland Browns. Falcons and Broncos next. Oof. Broncos kicking the crap out of them, 38-6. Respect Bo Nix. Respect Bo Nix.
I respect Bo Nix.
All right, good.
I know you needed verbal confirmation. I never said I didn't.
Top 5 graded Denver Bronco players in this game. Offensive guard Quinn Miners at the very top of the list with a 92.1. Edge rusher Nick Benito, a 90.0. Offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey, a 77.4. Defensive lineman John Franklin Myers with a 77.4. And then wide receiver Devon Vele with a 77.5. Bo Nix in this game, an 83.3 overall grade. For the Atlanta Falcons, guard Chris Lindstrom, as he often is at the very top of this list, with an 85.9. Wide receiver Cordell Hodge with a 78.2. Wide receiver Drake London, a 77.7. Safety Jesse Bates, a 77.4. Bijan Robinson with a 69.3 at number 5 on this list. And then Kirk Cousins with a 74.6. Stat told the story, Dalton.
Okay. If the Falcons don't find some sort of pass rush that is better than what they have run through out there through 11 weeks, they will get no further than the first round of the playoffs. They are still only ahead of Carolina in pass rush grade. In this game, we've talked about it. You keep Bo Nix clean, respect him. He's really good. We'll get to that side of it. They only pressured Nix on 7 of 36 dropbacks. They did not get a pressure until it was inside the 2-minute warning in the first half. A single pressure.
Not great.
And it was the only sack that they had all day, okay? Their starting defensive line, okay, their front 4. Matt Judon, Arnold Ebiketie, Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata. All right, that's the starting 4. 81 combined pass rush reps. 1 pressure.
Yikes.
From the 4 of them.
Yikes.
And then the most disappointing, just throw the Falcons D-line for me, because they're going nowhere beyond the wild card round. If this is their pass rush.
They don't feel like a complete team.
No, but it's this one thing
for me. Like, I think their back seven is good enough, especially you talk about the safeties with Bates and Simmons, Terrell on the outside. The linebackers are getting a little bit better, but this isn't just a below-average pass. This is disaster. Like, this is the second worst pass rush in football other than Carolina. That's and you're in an NFC where who's in playoff position right now? Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Jordan Love. You're going to play a really good quarterback.
Yeah.
In the playoffs, in the NFC, really on both sides. But in the NFC, there's some Matt Stafford, whoever. There's some high-flying offenses. If this is the level they're going to rush the passer at come playoff time, their season, if they get there, because the NFC South is still kind of open, because we see it like this. Like Denver, they scored, 38 points on them. 38 points on them, to me, because the Falcons have zero pass rush. It's not even mediocre or below average. There's nothing. I think they have 8 or 9 sacks this whole season. They are not going to survive like this. There could even be more games they lose down the stretch, and this division could keep tightening because they just have no answer of getting to the quarterback. It took them 28 minutes to get a pressure in this game. That they can't live like that. There's no way.
No, they're my most disappointing. I think you highlighted it really well. On the other side of things, my stat that told the story kind of goes into my most impressive as well. It's just the offensive efficiency overall with the Denver Broncos. They're very comfortable and confident with exactly who they are as a football team. They're very comfortable no matter who Bo Nix is throwing the ball to, no matter who he's handing the ball off to. They've got a lot of different options, and the Broncos just feel very complete as a football team in terms of what they would be this season. The best version of what the Broncos were going to be this season, it feels pretty close to getting to that, right? At the beginning of the year, it was their defense that was really standing out, and I still think they're playing well. You see guys like Nick Bonino now in that top 5. Obviously, Zach Allen's been a big story. John Franklin Myers, too, in this lineup. So, those guys are playing really well on the defensive side of the football. But then on the offensive side of things, that is really starting to almost be even more of a catalyst of why they're winning these games, right? 38 points. Okay, the Falcons' defense is not great, but still, Nick's 84.7 passing grade this past week, 100% adjusted completion percentage in the first half. You want to talk about somebody who's got mastery of an offense? 100% adjusted completion percentage in the first half from Bo Nix. At the end of the game, it was a 90.6, so a little bit lower, but geez, still in the low 90s. That is somebody who understands exactly where he needs to go with the football. Over the last 4 weeks, Bo Nix is 5th in passing grade, and he is 3rd in completion percentage. He's also 1st in turnover-worthy play percentage. Oh, because it's 0%. Funny enough, it's him and Caleb Williams. They're the only ones over the last month who have not had a turnover-worthy play. So Nix is just playing really, really good football. And I think for my most impressive, I don't think the Broncos' offensive line is giving enough credit for what they are doing here. Over the last 4 weeks, they are 1st in the NFL in passing grade as a team at an 84.9, 1 sack, 3 pressures, and an 8.6 pressure percentage allowed against the Falcons. Yes, the Falcons' defensive line is not good. I'm glad that you pointed that out. But the Broncos' offensive line put the clamps on him. This is a team that you go into this matchup and you say, we're better than this other team. We should whoop on this other team. This team should not be able to get close to our quarterback. And you know what? It's exactly what happened. That is exactly what happened. This is an offensive line that is now taking care of business, isn't stooping down to the level of their opponent if they're a little bit lesser than them, and I think they're up to the challenge against even some of the best defensive lines in the NFL. So Nix, his mastery of the offense, and then playing behind this offensive line, that's the stat that told the story here in this one and how you get such a lopsided victory for Denver.
You can see Nix and Sean Payton getting more in sync every week, and it's getting to scary levels of stuff here that's going to make people think of another guy Peyton used to coach. But here's a couple of things I just want to throw at with this. Bo Nix since week 5. Okay. Well, first of all, you mentioned turnover-worthy plays. 1 in his last 8 games, which that's crazy. That's crazy for anybody. I don't care if Lamar or Burrow or anybody. That's nuts, okay? Since week 5, all right? Took him a few games to get comfortable. We know this. Everybody you mentioned the memes and the jokes and whatever. Since week 5, clean pocket passing grade. Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Bo Nix. When he's clean, he's as good as anybody right now. And the other guy, the offensive line, I just want to mention too, the star of that offensive line, their right guard, Quinn Miners. This is like the quietest, best player in football. He's the 11th highest graded guard in the league right now. 92.3 run blocking grade in this game and only allowed 1 pressure in pass protection. I'll tell you what, what was fun to watch in this game? Go in and watch his key plays in here. Watch him get out on screens. There was at least 3 times where he gets out in space on screens. I'm telling you right now, the Falcons linebackers hate this guy. Absolutely hate him. He was mauling Atlanta's linebackers all day in the run game, in the screen game. It was so much fun to watch. Quinn Miners, it's a good offensive line that's been playing a lot better, but he's the best player there. I think he got a big extension this offseason, I'm pretty sure.
I think so.
I think he did, and it was well earned. He's one of the best guards in football, no question.
Yeah, Quinn Myers played very, very well. Obviously, anytime you grade that highly as an offensive lineman, you got to be doing a lot right. And you got to have some pancakes and major blocks in there as well. You know, you can't just eat. Even if you're doing your job like steady, it's like, all right, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. You got to have some of those high-impact plays, those plus 1.5s, those plus 2s, and Quinn Myers had a couple of them yesterday. That's why he was able to have that very, very high grade. Before we got 2 more games left. We got 1 more Sunday game, and then I do want to turn back the clock a little bit, talk about Thursday Night Football, break down that game because it's a major divisional matchup. But there's some things that school didn't really teach you, right? Like how to handle the financial world, for example, how to plan correctly for your future, and that includes for your kids. Fabric makes it easy for you to set up an investment account for your child right now that will grow with them and helps prepare for their financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. While your kids cannot invest while they are minors, a UGMA kids investment account allows you to invest on their behalf and gives their investments more time to grow. Funds can basically be used on anything benefiting your child. It comes to tuition, books, summer camps, after-school activities, all that kinds of stuff. And then when they're a little bit older, you know, first car, first home, even start a business, all that kinds of good stuff. The possibilities really are endless. It's all online. Setting up an account could take you as little as 5 minutes. You can get started investing with as little as $1 a day, and then just manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child's future today. Meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That is meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. This is a paid promotion for the Fabric UGMA product and not for investment advisory services. Portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Custodial service provided by Apex Clearing Corporations. All investment is subject to risk. Terms do apply. Learn more at meetfabric.com. Seahawks 49ers. Little NFC West matchup here. Seattle, thrilling victory at the end here. Comeback victory here for the Seattle Seahawks to make it quite a tight 4-team race there in that division. 3 teams now tied at 5-5, and then the Arizona Cardinals alone at the top at 6-4, so just 1 game ahead of all 3 of those teams. Seattle wins this one 20-17. Seattle's top 5 graded players in this one. When we were talking about Josh Downs before, I said him and Jackson Smith-Njigba, 2 of the best slot receivers in the game. Here we have Jackson Smith-Njigba, the top graded player for the Seattle Seahawks at an 88.2. Center, Oli Oluwatimi with an 80.8. Cornerback Devon Witherspoon with a 78.2. Linebacker Tyrese Knight with a 77.5. And then offensive tackle Abraham Lucas, good to see him back in the starting lineup, with a 76.8. Quarterback Geno Smith in this one is 71.9. And then on the San Francisco side of things, wide receiver Juwan Jennings an 82.1. Guard Dominic Pooney with this 81.6. Offensive tackle Cole McKivvick's 79.4. Edge rusher Leonard Floyd 71.0. Center Jake Brendel with a 70.9. And then quarterback Brock Purdy a 63.7. What do we got, Dalton?
Okay, so you know sometimes it's good to show some humility and admit when you're wrong, right?
No.
I was wrong this week.
Oh.
Well, some of us are humble, Trevor. Okay. I don't know what your bot audience has your ego looking like, but
Well, they're bots, so pretty good.
okay.
It's pretty good living.
They really cater to you.
Yeah. So they're bots.
Anyway, sometimes I have to admit I'm wrong. And I pretty much guaranteed everybody all week the 49ers would win this game. And why did I do that? Because for the last 6 meetings, every single time the Niners played the Seahawks got run right over on the ground. Every time. In that 6-game winning streak against Seattle, San Fran averaged on design carries 177 yards a game. All right? Seattle finally stopped the run to some extent. Only 91 designed rushing yards for the 49ers in this game. It kept them in the game. If nothing else, you have to keep yourself in the game against the Niners. Don't let them just run away with it like they had done the last literally 6 times, okay? 22 designed carries for the 49ers. 91 rushing yards. They only forced 3 missed tackles.
Longest carry of the day was only 11 yards from Christian McCaffrey, all right? The big thing in this game that Seattle, you could see it, they moved their defensive ends out just a little bit wider than they usually do, and they said, listen, if you're going to beat us, just beat us up the middle, please. We're so sick of you running off tackle. Because that's what the Niners do. They run off tackle. It's Kyle Shanahan. They want to get out there and run the stretch and do all of that. Finally, Seattle answered with just, even if we're not great. Remember we talked about before in the secondary, if you're not that great, just sit back and don't give up explosives.
Yeah.
The Seahawks did the run game version of that. Just don't give them the sideline. Just don't, because then they'll just run down the sideline, and there we go. That's going to be 200 yards again. At least keep them between the tackles and just make tackles. And if they get 5 yards, okay, fine. At least they didn't get 60. And it kept them in the game. This was the one time. The Niners only got off tackles 7 times and got 12 yards on it. They finally kept contained, stopped the run, and at the very least, which he took advantage of, they gave Geno Smith a chance to save their season. Because that's what they did in this game. If they were 4-6 and behind everybody else, they would have had a huge problem. I don't think they would have came back from that. Now at 5-5, everybody's in striking distance. With the way Geno and their passing game is, it can be hot and cold, but you know what? All 4 teams in the NFC West have a shot to win the division. But the biggest thing to me, finally for once, they slowed down the 49ers on the ground and gave themselves a chance to win.
It's a good call out. On the other side of things, man, San Francisco's defense, specifically when Nick Bosa went out, because Nick Bosa went out in the third quarter with about 8.5 left in the game. Seattle had 3 drives after that. One was a touchdown, other was turnover on downs, the other one was a touchdown. And so you're talking about 14 points allowed with no Bosa on the field. They went from a negative 0.36 EPA per play with Bosa on the field through whatever it was, 2 quarters and change, to then a positive 0.270 EPA per play without Bosa there. So a massive swing, almost half a point swing each play with Bosa on the field versus not on the field. It was just night and day different. And the 49ers, we've talked about this defense. Like, this defense, sneaky. Over the last couple of weeks, we've brought this up a couple of times. Like, run defense for this team, not really great. Like, sometimes coverage is a little up and down just because coverage is up and down naturally anyway. So when the defensive line already wasn't playing well, and now you're taking Nick Bosa out of it, very clearly Seattle was confident with Geno standing in the pocket, with them getting the ball exactly where they needed to, which brings me to my most impressive with Jackson Smith-Njigba. 11 targets, 10 catches, 110 receiving yards. He has the most snaps from the slot this year, the most yards from the slot this year, the most catches from the slot this year. So this is a highly productive football player. And then, obviously, him playing the most snaps from the slot naturally gives him the ability to stack up the stats from the slot. But he has been really rewarding this team when they have targeted him. We've talked a lot about how DK Metcalf is sort of a Geno Smith style of wide receiver. He's a contested catch guy. Geno Smith just wants to throw the big-time throws between the tight coverage and give his team an opportunity to come down with a pass. But Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think, is rounding out this offense with those 2 guys there. And then, obviously, you throw Tyler Lockett out there as well when he is healthy. So Smith-Njigba's really kind of come along and been a worthwhile draft pick for them now as somebody who's one of the best slot receivers in the game, which is a lot of fun to watch.
I think it's the biggest improvement in their offense this year because I watched Smith-Njigba a lot last year, and the one thing I wasn't a fan of, and this was under Shane Waldron last year, was they didn't create ways to get him the ball. Obviously, he's really good, and apparently now every week's the Rose Bowl, so he can just tee off every week, but it just wasn't a lot of design looks for him and not a lot of ways to isolate him. And Ryan Grubb, I think, does just such a better job of getting him, if it's not looks by design, just getting him into the first read, right? Because like we talked about with Josh Downs earlier, he's a chain mover. And you need a chain mover. It's great that Metcalf can hit the home runs and Tyler Lockett can do what he does. And I think if you have Smith-Njigba on the inside over the middle, especially working the chains like that, you got a dangerous passing game like you mentioned with a lot of dimensions. I want to go on the other side in the slot sort of on defense. I just love Devon Witherspoon, man. He's just a great football player no matter where he is. And they're leaning him more into this role like the Chiefs do with Trent McDuffie, where it can be like outside on early downs and inside on late downs, or maybe even move him inside to help in the run game. He was their highest graded run defender in this game. I mentioned the run defense, 79.1 run defense grade. We know he's a great tackler. He's one of the best tackling corners in football. He's so darn aggressive. Couple of run stops, pass breakup that it was deflected and led to an interception in this game. Consistent cover guy. Just such a great versatile football player. Again, I that's the one comp in the league I have to it as a guy who kind of flips inside and outside. It's what Trent McDuffie does with the Chiefs and just plays every role in their secondary that they need. He hits people. He's a great tackler. He can cover. He can blitz. He had a pressure as a blitzer that forced an incompletion from Brock Purdy. Just incredible work that he does from so many different spots in the field at such a young age. He's one of my favorite guys to watch week in and week out.
And what's your most disappointing? Before I hit mine, because mine's a little bit more big picture.
It's not panic, but I'm kind of side-eyeing this 49ers passing game a little bit. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Brock Purdy, we're going to go the first 6 weeks of the season.
Okay.
He was the second highest graded quarterback in football. All right?
Okay.
The last 4 weeks, he's got a 56.2 passing grade. Okay, 31 quarterbacks have taken at least 80 dropbacks in that time. That's dead last among those 31. And that's since week 7, all right? Now, Trevor, they play the Chiefs that week. What happened just before halftime in that game? What disastrously bad thing happened in that game that I'm suddenly implying it might be a cause for this? That was when Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL. And I know Juwan Jennings is playing great, and we've highlighted him.
I thought you were looking for a play, and I was like, I don't know what play you're talking about. And it was the Brandon Ayuk play. Okay.
Just before halftime, week 7, against the Chiefs, that Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL. And I know Juwan Jennings has been great, and I know George Kittle was hurt in this game, but it's not just this game that Purdy has struggled. It's the last 4, and that's the first one, okay? I don't think it's any coincidence that we've suddenly seen struggles now that Brandon Ayuk is out for the season. Because he's quietly one of the best receivers in football, right? Top 12, 14, somewhere in there, somewhere around that range.
I think that's fair. That's
so efficient. Fair. He was their best route runner. That's easily, I think. I know Debo does all the things he does, and Jennings is coming on. Brandon Ayuk was their most natural, classic wide receiver as a route runner, especially. So reliable. I don't think it's any coincidence that suddenly Brock Purdy is struggling since Ayuk got hurt, and they need to find a way for him to break out of this funk. And again, George Kittle missed this game. Anytime you're missing George Kittle, that's a big deal. Get him healthy. Obviously, it looks better. They need to, get Debo, get a little more creative with that. And they need to get Christian McCaffrey going. It doesn't feel like McCaffrey's hit his top gear yet. I don't see him looking as explosive as usual yet. We'll probably get there with more reps. But I am kind of at least side-eyeing this passing game and Brock Purdy a little bit without Brandon Ayuk, because I've got 4 games here where I go, you're last in the NFL in passing grade. And that's a problem. We can't have that if you're trying to make the playoffs or win this division.
My most disappointing is kind of just the 49ers season to this point. They're tied with the Los Angeles Rams and the Seattle Seahawks now at 5-5. But they have now each played the division opponents once, and they've lost all 3 of them. So all of a sudden, you are at best going to be like toss-up tiebreakers with all of these teams when it comes to either making the playoffs or winning the division. And it just, I'm not giving up on the 49ers. They're still a really talented football team, but it's hard to look at this team and think, okay, well, if you're 5-5 at this point in the season, are you really going to make a game-changing run here? I don't know about all that, So it's
they don't look the same.
No, and
as they haven't, because they've been the dominant team.
It's hard because
here's the other problem.
I actually hate the Kyle Shanahan can't win big games thing. I really do, but
here's your big problem. Your next 2 games are at Green Bay and at Buffalo.
No, it does not get easier for them. And then again, you have to play all these teams again, and I think that those 3 teams, the Cardinals, the Rams, and the Seahawks a little bit of a toss-up because I think they're kind of week to week, but the Cardinals and the Rams are getting better. You already lost to them once. I don't have a lot of faith that the Niners are going to beat them again, so all of a sudden a team that I felt like was another double-digit win team, another team is going to win this division once again, I think that's certainly at risk now.
They need to
with how they're playing.
They need to go 5-2, and I'm not sure there's 5 wins of these last 7 games that I see here. You got
what's the 7? Go ahead.
You have a round with the division. Again, that's 3.
Yep.
Packers, Bills, Bears, Dolphins.
Yeah, that's not. Oh boy, that's tough.
And Packers, Bills, and Dolphins.
Yeah, I don't know if they make the playoffs.
All on the road. All 3 of them.
Yeah, and if this Niners team doesn't make the playoffs, that's
tough.
Extremely disappointing, even with injuries. That's extremely disappointing.
My worry level with the Niners
it's probably at about a 6 out of 10 right now. Because they need to go 5-2, I think, to win this division.
Yeah, I'd probably go 7 out of 10, honestly.
Yeah.
I'd be right in that same boat, but I might be a little bit more worried about him. All right, last game that we're going to talk about is Thursday Night Football, Commanders-Eagles. Eagles win the game 26-18. Top 5 graded Philadelphia Eagles in this game. Guard Landon Dickerson with a 91.7. Offensive tackle Jordan Mailata with an 89.5. Edge rusher Josh Sweat an 89.0. Center Cam Jurgens with an 85.0. Offensive tackle Lane Johnson with an 85.0. What stands out there? Oh, it's 4 of the 5 offensive linemen on the team and the top 5 graded players, and they're all above 85. That'll pretty much get you a win most weeks in the NFL. Jalen Hurts in this one is 74.6. On the other side of things, the Washington Commanders, cornerback Mike Sanders still with the number 1 spot on the list at an 89.0. Tight end Zach Ertz an 84.9. Running back Austin Eckler with a 78.9. Linebacker Frankie Louvu a 70.3. And cornerback Benjamin St. Juste a 66.2. Jaden Daniels in this game is 63.9 overall grade. Real quick comment with this one. I'll start with the Eagles. My stat that told the story is just the Saquon offense. They run everything through Saquon Barkley. It is completely about Saquon Barkley. It is getting him the football. It is running the ball very well behind a very good offensive line. And outside of that, they complement the Saquon Barkley offense with an elite, unstoppable short game tush push, which on 3rd and 3 or anything inside that, you're either getting enough yards to get the first down or you're getting enough yards to then do a tush push on the 4th down, which you're then going to convert. So that unbelievable high completion percentage there is fantastic. When you get to 3 yards and in on the goal line, Jalen Hurts is scoring a touchdown because you're just going to rush it in. So that's very efficient. And then the complement of the passing game is you have one of the best one-on-one deep coverage winners in the NFL in A.J. Brown, and then you complement that with Devontae Smith. We're building the entire offense around Saquon Barkley is perfect. It is perfect for this Philadelphia Eagles team. And as much as I was a little bit worried about them like 3-4 weeks ago, I'm less worried about the Eagles down the stretch now than I certainly was last year against the team that had a better record. So this, to me, is all about the Saquon Barkley offense that I wondered, okay, is it going to slow down at some point? Has not slowed down. People cannot figure it out. What they do is so efficient, and they do it with really, really good football players that it's hard to just stop the Philadelphia Eagles on offense. So that's the stat that told the story here, is that the Commanders just ran into one of the best and most efficient offenses in the league.
Well, they may have also, there's several angles to this. They also ran into what is currently the highest graded defense in football. And the Eagles have the highest graded defense in football.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying the Commanders have the highest graded defense.
No, they ran into the Commanders ran into it.
Yes.
This is when they put Cooper DeJean in the starting lineup, and they got these linebackers emerging.
Yeah.
And the D line's a little more sound than it was against the run earlier in the year. No, I think right now the Eagles are pretty clearly the biggest threat in the NFC to the Lions. I'm not even sure it's close, because I don't think the Packers, unless they really play up, I don't think they can keep up in the trenches. There's nobody in the South, and the West is kind of even. I think the Eagles are very clearly the second best team in the NFC.
I didn't think that I would say that this year, and I agree with you.
The defense, actually, I had Lions over Eagles in the NFC title game, just in case these two rookies on the outside fix this coverage unit.
What would you say? It's Lions, Eagles, Packers, Vikings?
I'd put Packers. I would probably still put Packers third, the Vikings in that spot.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Lions, Eagles, Packers, Vikings.
Yeah, I would go there.
Okay.
And then maybe, I might have Washington and Arizona are both fun from there. The threats, at least.
I think the next two spots are toss-ups right there.
But I think the Eagles are clearly second. I think the Lions are still a shade ahead of them, and I think the gap after the Eagles is pretty solid between with the way they're playing on both sides of the ball. And the big thing, I'm gonna go stat that tells it, and most impressive all in one, because I'm on each side of the ball.
All right, let's do it.
So the stat for this game, I'm gonna go with Washington's offense, because this game was 14-12 pretty late. I'm gonna get to that part because I was irritated Thursday. But we've talked about the run game for Washington and the balance they have. That's what's really made them great, on top of Jaden playing great. Only had one explosive run in this game, kind of working this like I did with the Saints, but it's more drastic here. Mm-hmm. In their 4 losses, they have 6 explosive runs total, and 4 of them were Jaden scrambles in week 1 against the Bucs. So their last 3 losses against Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Philly, 3 of the best teams in the league, mind you.
Yeah.
2 explosive runs in 3 games.
Yeah, need more than that.
In their 7 wins, they have 32. This is the difference.
I'll do it.
This is the difference. When they have the run game going,
yeah,
and Jaden going, and Brian Robinson going, and Austin Eckler going, and the offensive line going, because that's always the big piece here, and I'll get to the other one. Here's a simple fact with this game. Washington got blasted in the trenches. And there's obviously this in-game decisions and all that stuff. The Eagles, what Howie Roseman's built in the trenches with the O-line and all the Georgia Bulldogs on defense and all that stuff, they got blasted in the trenches in this game. First 7 weeks, Washington's offensive line was top 10, ninth in the league. All right? Last 4, they're last, dead last. Now, again, they've played great trench teams, Pittsburgh and Baltimore and Philly. It gets easier. I think they play Dallas next week. Gets a little easier. But they can't be last. They got to be a little bit better, and they got to run the ball. So that's one side. The other side, my most impressive part, the Eagles' offensive line. It's
clearly with the top 5.
Clearly. It's filthy. I mean, Mekhi Becton moving into guard, it's been a godsend for him. Cam Jurgens has adjusted really well at center, back at his natural position, right? And it's no coincidence with Jordan Mailata healthy in this game, and he's back after a few games off. They were struggling at left tackle. I think it was with Fred Johnson playing left tackle. When they've had Mailata on the field this year, they're actually far and away the best offensive line in football. It's like the number, you look at the numbers with him on the field, it's even better than Detroit. Like, clearly. It's crazy the impact that he had this week now that he came back. This game as a unit, as I'm sure you can guess from that top 5, 93.5 overall as a unit, best by any team in any game this season. The Eagles just dominated this game on both sides in the trenches, and that was the difference.
For my most impressive, I'm going to talk about Mike Sainristil, number 1 on the list for the Commanders for a reason. 6 targets in this game. They went after him. Only allowed 3 catches for 29 yards. Had 3 forced incompletions on the 3 other targets that went his way. 90.1 coverage grade in this one. Sainristil has just been so impressive to me because I felt like he was a slot corner kind of coming into the league, and now they're very comfortable playing him at wide corner as well. So of the catches that he gave up as well, 2 of them were slant routes versus cover 3. So he's on off cover 3 and a slant route against off cover 3 for an outside corner. I mean, like, that's a beater. Like, you're not really going to be able to time that super well in off coverage unless you're really looking for just that route. Good chance it's just going to get completed. And it did. And it got completed, and he tackled, I think it was A.J. Brown right away. I think it was A.J. Brown twice. And so when A.J. Brown caught the football against Mike Sainristil, it was for small gains on slant passes that are designed to be the coverage that he was in on those plays. So just a really, really good day for Sainristil. And then most disappointing for me, I'll sort of piggyback on what you talked about with the offense. Not really explosive in the run game, not really explosive in the pass game either. And particularly, I think it's just the averages that this team has that kind of worries me. Passing yards per attempt has declined every single week over the last month. And the average depth of target has declined to a season low this past week. Now, there was one week where it wasn't exactly an even decline every single time. I think one of the weeks was kind of like flip-flop. But we've been declining with this Commanders passing attack to where it was a season low average depth of target this past week. You talked about, okay, it's a good Philadelphia defense. We want to tip the hat to him. But for the Commanders, not running the ball on an explosive level, not passing the ball on an explosive level. Cliff Kingsbury, did he fly too close to the sun at the beginning of the season? Was he unbelievable? Was he unstoppable on third down, in the red zone, everything? Could people really not figure out how to stop this Washington Commanders offense through the first 5 weeks of the season?
Well, and people have the Cliff Kingsbury theory.
And now you're kind of figuring it out here, and he's not really able to adjust. That's going to be a major storyline to watch kind of down the stretch here. Most disappointing? Did you hit on this one?
This was just the first game, like in the last 8-9 minutes, where I actually saw this Commanders team rattled, and I did not understand it all. I know we're analytics people here, and I know a lot of those decisions go into on-field decisions, but first of all, the sequence of play calling, right, when they were moving down the field with Jaden, when they were down 14-12, and it was maybe turning into their best drive of the night. They get to 2nd and 1, they run up the middle. Nothing. Cool. They rush the play to 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2, and they run up the middle again, and then I go, okay, that wasn't a great call. Let's kick the field goal and take a lead. And they stay on the field and call some other run where both guards pull and run into each other, and it's a whole train wreck play. And for some reason, they didn't just take a lead. And I know a lot of times the short distance situations are, okay, nowadays we're going for it more. And I'm all for that. Like, there's a lot of situations, like the Bills one, love that, love going for it. There's other ones where it's great. But this was one in this slow-paced type of game where you could take a lead, and when you're getting beat in the trenches, well, make Jalen Hurts beat you. Jalen Hurts wasn't great in this game. He was decent. I just don't get – that was a moment where I go, it looked like the game sped up on them. And then even in the last 4 or 5 minutes, when they were down 2 scores, they were down 16. It's low probability. It's probably a 3% chance they're going to win the game, but it felt like then there was no urgency at all. Like they were that last drive where they scored their last touchdown, there was just no, where was like, hurry up and maybe we still have a 1% chance to win this game. I just thought for some reason the last 8-9 minutes of this game, this was the first time I saw a young team with a first-year coaching staff kind of rattled. And again, it's on the road. It's Thursday. And they don't have a bye. It's weird to me. They don't have a bye week till week 14.
Yeah.
So maybe they're a little bit gassed too, and they're just
Could
like,
be.
you know what? Let's take the extra few days. We're white flagging this game. But I didn't love the last couple sequences from Washington here. I mean, things like this.
It was always going to be up and down.
It was just the first time that I, especially the sequence where they didn't kick the field goal. I was like, well, that's not what we've seen from them the rest of this year. So. Believe they're playing Dallas next. Bounce back opportunity if they bounce back.
Sure.
I'm not worried at all.
Right. No, and they were always going to go through a little bit of a roller coaster there, but they kind of ran into a buzzsaw of an Eagles team that's playing really well, and that might just be the overarching story there. If you guys want to see the PFF stats for yourself that we have talked about here on the show, best way to do that, go into PFF.com, getting yourself a PFF Plus subscription, or you can go to subscribe.pff.com. Appreciate everybody watching and listening to the program. For Dalton Wasserman, I'm Trevor Sikkema. Thank you so much for hanging out with us as we have done the grade release show here for Week 11. We'll see you same time for next week in Week 12. See you guys then.